Hello and welcome to the DRaaS, and Ransomware Megacast event brought to you by Actual Tech Media. Thank you for joining us on today's event. We've got an awesome event lined up for you today. You'll hear from KnowBe4, Unitrends, Zerto, Cohesity, Arcserve, and PhoenixNAP. I've seen all their presentations, all their demos, and I'll tell you, my friends, you are in for a great show today. We at Actual Tech Media created the Megacast and EcoCast event series to help educate the world of IT professionals about the most innovative enterprise-grade technology solutions available to you today, to help you to learn as much as possible, to get all your questions answered, and do it in one online virtual event. And while you're learning, you'll have a chance to win one of our very cool prizes, which I'll talk about here in just a moment. Now, this event is not a competition between the presenters. There's no winner being selected here today. We've asked the presenters to remain positive and focus on what differentiates their product, their features, and how their products are going to help to solve your technology challenges. Now, before we jump into it with a brief keynote and then kick it off with today's first presenter, we have a little bit of housekeeping that we need to cover. First off, prizes. I said we will have prizes, and I'll be talking about those in just a minute. We've got iPads. We've got $500 gift cards. Really cool stuff, so stay tuned for those. I'll also cover the legalese prize terms and conditions that you need to be aware of. We want this to be an educational event, so I'll be doing my best to answer every question that comes in the Q&A box right there on your console. That's where you ask your questions. That's where you get your answers. And I'll also be asking you some poll questions as well. I'll be sharing the results of those poll questions so you can see how you stack up with your peers. You answer those poll questions right in the slide window where you're watching today's presentation. Now, we want this to be a social event, so throughout the event, when I'm not answering your questions, I'll be trying to monitor Twitter for today's hashtag, which I'll cover here in just a moment. I'll be retweeting just about anything that you say about the event, as long as it's good, of course. And I'll be following just about anybody who's talking about the event and today's topic. We also have a lot of great resources for you. We have handouts, which are in a tab right next to the right of the Q&A box. So if you click on the word handouts, you'll see a list of the handouts that you can download. You can share those with your friends, family, colleagues, whatever you'd like to do. Now, about your console, there's a few features I'd like to point out. This console that's here in your web browser is kind of like a windowed operating system, if you will. So you can drag around these windows by clicking on the title bar. You can go to the corner of the windows and you can resize them to make them smaller or larger. So arrange it however you'd like so that you can see the entire presentation as well as all the questions and answers that are happening on the event. Now, this is a totally live event, I should point out. And as you know, with totally live things, sometimes they don't always go as expected. And for that reason, I ask for your patience in advance. If something goes wrong, if we have trouble getting a speaker on the line, speakers are calling in from all around the United States and in some cases around the world. If you ever have trouble hearing or seeing the presentation, simply press refresh on your browser, and 99% of the time, that will resolve any trouble that you run into. If a refresh does not work, you might try a different web browser, see if that will resolve the problem. Of course, check your computer speakers. This should work on a mobile device just as well as it works on your local Windows machine or Mac. If you simply can't see the presentation or hear the presentation, feel free to use the questions box, and I'll do my best to help you troubleshoot any problem that you might have. Now, I said we have some prizes. Do we ever have some prizes for you? We have got 5 of the brand new, newly released iPad Pros. These are the 11-inch iPad Pros, 256 gigs of storage. This is the Wi-Fi only model. And yes, you can choose your choice of color. We also have, count them, 6 Amazon $500 gift cards to give out on today's event. I'll be announcing the lucky prize winners after every presenter on the event. We'll also announce them on Twitter as well as in the Q&A box there on your console. So make sure you stay tuned for the prize announcements. You could be one of today's lucky winners. Now, when it comes to the prize terms and conditions, if you go to your handouts box and scroll to the bottom, you'll find a link to the Actual Tech Media Megacast prize terms and conditions. It's on there that you'll find all the legalese that you need to be aware of. The most important thing is that you need to be present on the live event to be eligible to win. But you should know that grand prize winners must also submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media in order to receive their prize. We will reach out to prize winners via email after the event. Now, if you do win one of the prizes, you have the option to make a donation of the prize value to one of these selected charities on the screen. Through the Megacast and EcoCast event series, we have donated thousands and thousands of dollars to these charities, and that's only possible thanks to generous donations from IT professionals such as yourself. So if you are contacted because you won a prize, you want to donate to charity, we would love to help you do that. Now, when it comes to social media, the hashtag for today's event is DRaaS, that's Disaster Recovery as a Service, Megacast. So DRaaS Megacast, I'll be following the hashtag out on Twitter. I'll be tweeting about it. Actual Tech Media will be tweeting about it. Make sure you follow us. And of course, you're welcome to follow me. I am David M. Davis out on Twitter. I'm always tweeting about the latest in enterprise technology. With that housekeeping information behind us, I want to do a little bit of level setting here and tell you my take when it comes to preparing for disaster in 2019 and beyond. First off, there's the bad news. The bad news here is that IT organizations are struggling with compliance, with disaster preparation, with constant complexity, massively growing data, and at the same time, they're being asked to control costs. This bad news, I'm sure, is not a big surprise to you. You're in IT, you work at an IT organization, most likely, and so these are the types of struggles that you're probably dealing with every day. And then there's the scary statistics, right? According to the EMC Global Data Protection Index, 36% of companies surveyed reported internal or external security breaches. That's really scary, but even worse is we all know that a lot of companies are being breached and they won't report it. They don't want to talk about it. And when those breaches happen, they say that on average, 2.36 terabytes of data was lost. My friends, you know, that is a lot of data. That's not like a few megabytes. That's not like a file. That is a ton of data. That could be your customer database. That could be your order history. That could be your inventory or your HR database. Scary amounts of critical data are being lost. They say the average cost of data loss from this survey is $900,000. And I know that many data protection vendors, some that'll be on this event, will also offer their own statistics. And from what I've seen, many of the statistics out there have a much higher average cost than just $900,000. The average cost of downtime from this survey that I was looking at was $555,000, and the average length was 22 hours. That's an entire day. That's an entire day of downtime. That is a humongous resume-generating event, as they call it. And that's not something we want to be a part of. Now, of those surveyed, only 18% said that their current data protection and disaster recovery solution is able and ready to meet future business challenges. Now, the good news, on the other hand, let's be thankful for something. We have some good news here, and that is that disaster recovery and disaster recovery as a service solutions are making tremendous advances in the way of cloud-based data protection and disaster recovery. Continuous replication has become much easier and much more affordable for companies of all sizes. And then we have automated failover solutions so that we can get our company's applications back online faster than ever before. And finally, high-speed recovery solutions. And we'll be talking about many of these things on today's event. Now, the latest data protection solutions have also become more affordable thanks to virtualization. As we virtualize, data protection and disaster recovery become easier. There's also a number of pay-as-you-go or OpEx utility-based pricing models where perhaps you only have to pay for disaster recovery if you actually have a disaster, or perhaps it's only based on the amount of data that you are protecting. And in many cases, that's possible thanks to public cloud offerings. So what are my recommendations for disaster recovery and disaster recovery as a service for the future? Well, I would say, being a former IT manager, server admin, virtualization admin myself, do what makes your life in IT easier. I think that's kind of a no-brainer. You're going to do that no matter what, right? We want to make our lives easier. We have too much complexity, stress, and anxiety already. We need solutions that are going to make our life easier. But we also want to do what makes data protection and DR as reliable and as easy and as affordable as possible for our companies. While doing so, I recommend that you leverage the latest technology. It could be cloud, it could be virtualization, and it could be scalable data protection and disaster recovery solutions that protect your infrastructure really with a flip of a switch. You want to constantly educate yourself and your end users on security and how they can protect themselves and the company's critical data, because those users are your first line of defense. And then finally, you want to constantly test your solutions to ensure that you're ready, because you never know when disaster can strike or when a breach is going to happen. Thankfully, on this event, we have a lot of expert speakers that you'll be hearing from today. We have a lot of really innovative disaster recovery and disaster recovery as a service solutions that are going to help protect our companies from data loss, from ransomware, and security breaches. So with that, let's kick off today's Megacast. All right, we're going to start it off here with a couple poll questions. The poll question that's on the screen is, what is your industry vertical? And you may need to scroll down on the right-hand side of your slides window there to see all the different verticals, because as you can imagine, there's a lot of different verticals in the world. So I'm going to share the results of this poll question with you so you can see how you stack up against your peers on the event today. So if you don't mind answering that question, just select the vertical that corresponds to your company right there in the slides window. I'll give you a few more seconds here to answer that poll question while I approve some of the comments that are coming in. All right, looks like most everyone has voted on that poll. Let me share the results with you. And let's take a look at this. So good representation of state, local, federal governments, lower education, higher education, real good representation there. 11% healthcare, 9% finance and banking, 21% technology, 12% manufacturing. Wow, that's very high, very nice. And we have 9% other. Very interesting, very great responses there from hundreds of you, many hundreds of you out there in the audience. So thank you for responding to that poll question. I'm going to go ahead and pop up one more poll question before we get started with our first presentation. And this question is, how many people work in your IT department? So how big is your IT organization? Again, I'll share the responses with you on this poll here in just a moment while I approve some more of these hundreds of responses, hundreds of Q&A questions that are coming in. All right, looks like most everyone has voted. Let me share this poll with you. So 23% come from very large IT organizations, more than 100 people. 28% from IT organizations that are 2 to 5 people, and a real good representation in between. Thank you for responding to that poll. We got a lot more good polls coming up throughout the event. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Eric Krohn. He is a security awareness evangelist or advocate, and all-around great guy at KnowBe4. Eric, thanks for being on.
Hey, I'm happy to be here.
Take it away.
All right, sounds good. Well, folks, you know, this is going to be a great event today. Lots of good information going on here. I'm just thrilled to be a part of it, actually. You know, I always love doing these sorts of things where we can cover a whole lot of different people on these topics like this. And of course, disaster recovery is a service important in these days and ages, especially with ransomware doing what it is. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the ransomware piece here, just give a little bit of a, you know, a little bit of information as we go in this. There are others that are going to be able to dive deep into some of this stuff and the disaster recovery piece. But what I'm also going to talk about here is, quite frankly, one of the better ways to help reduce the risk of this, which is to work on the people side of things. So I want you to keep this in mind as you're hearing these other stories and things going on, is how you can leverage your users to actually help you a little bit more with this. So keep that in mind as you move forward through this megacast. You know, my name, again, Eric Krohn, security awareness advocate here at KnowBe4. Been in IT and security since, gosh, back in the mid-1990s. kind of showing my age a little bit here, but back in those days, it was definitely a different world. However, one of the things that was very common, even from back then, and has really proliferated throughout the years into where we are these days, is attacks on the humans, i.e. phishing. And the other thing is really, dealing with passwords. We've still fought with those two things over and over again. And they're actually two things that are still a basis to a lot of the attacks that are going on these days, right? Phishing is how this stuff gets started, and it's continuing to do that. So we're going to talk a little bit about that angle of things and how that works just a little bit. Again, I've been seeing this for years. It's always been that way. And unfortunately, it's not getting much better. The attackers are actually getting better at their wares and how they're doing these attacks. And so we kind of need to ramp up our game on defending against it. Now, I'm with KnowBe4 here. We're out of Clearwater, Florida, which is not participating in winter this year. It's been pretty fantastically warm down here, so I apologize to any of you up there in the snow and the cold areas. However, we've got over 21,000 customers. And why this really matters to you is since we do a security awareness training and simulated phishing platform, we hear a lot of the stories from folks, what they've seen. A lot of folks, unfortunately, or organizations, they come to us after the fact, which is kind of the wrong way to do it, quite honestly. But we hear these stories. We get to get an idea of just how bad things are out there. Now, an interesting thing about ransomware. Ransomware at this point, it seems to have dropped off a lot of the major news stuff, right? Like with WannaCry and all those really made a big splash. They made front page news. I don't see it quite as much as we did before. However, I want to warn you that doesn't mean it's stopping, not by any means at all. I think what's happening is it's the same kind of thing that keeps hitting people over and over again. Now, while it's disastrous and horrible for the organizations, it doesn't rate the front page because it's no absolutely new exploit or something like that. But again, don't let that lull you into a false sense of security. Ransomware is ugly, and it's just continuing on and on and on, right? So here's what we know a little bit. Ransomware has been growing year after year after year, predicted to exceed damages of $11.5 billion by 2019, continues to grow. We've seen them try to hit mobile devices. And I put this up there because I think that's going to be one of our big issues. I think it's going to be something that is really going to make or break or really change kind of how things are going. Once the attackers are able to get into our mobile devices, I think it's going to be one of those moments that's going to hit the front pages, okay? They keep trying. It is a little bit more difficult to do that than on the desktops, and so thus far we've been able to avoid it by not doing things like sideloading APKs or rooting phones. There have been some attacks that have been predicated on people giving an application the proper the proper permissions to do this. And so we have to watch that sort of thing. People need to be smart enough not to give, a flashlight app access to all of your SMS messages and your photos, right? That's something that we can train people to do as well. But most of these attacks come in through that way. However, I'm going to put on my fortune-telling hat here. I think once we end up hitting a mobile device or there's an exploit found, it is going to be front page again, and it's going to spread very, very quickly. So what we do know about people is they want to click on things. What we found is of those people that click on these links in our platform, about 55% of them click on the phishing link in under 60 minutes. So the email comes in, gets in their inbox, bam. They have already clicked on it in less than 60 minutes, 55% of the time, okay? That's pretty significant. If we could get users to action on these kinds of emails that are important, within the organization, in the first 60 minutes, well, we could kind of rewrite the book on efficiency there, right? But the attackers know how to do this. They get in because they exploit the human element, the emotions that are involved in people, and get them to click on things. this is something that, again, they've been practicing this for so many years now. The days of the Nigerian print scam emails and things like that are mostly gone. And what they've replaced it with is very intelligent, very well done attacks. And so they're again very, very good at doing this. This 55% it's interesting because a lot of our email templates that this number is based on are based on actual attacks in the real. So we take these things that are reported to us, we defang them, we turn them into templates, and again, 55% click rate within the first hour from those people that are going to click. It's pretty eye-opening. Now, what this results in, though, is all kinds of successful attacks, right? I'm going to cover a couple here just really quickly. The city in Iowa, Muscatine, Iowa, unknown strain, didn't know the ransom amount. However, the cyber insurance is helping pay for recovery, okay? What this did, though, is it took down services for this city. And we're seeing this a lot in cities and in healthcare still. Small and large, different cities. We all know Atlanta got hit, but we see it here too. So it took down their permitting payments for parking tickets. Searching public library book lists were offline. They ended up having to fall back to working with paper and pencil. Now, I don't know about you, anytime the government has to resort to paper and pencil, it scares me pretty deeply, right? That's kind of a core fear of mine. That is never going to end well. So we see another one here, Onslow Water and Sewer Authority in Jacksonville, North Carolina, hit by a riot about 9 days after a banking Trojan attack. And this was interesting because there's some questions about whether or not those two were related. It's very likely that the same attackers were already in there with the banking Trojan and then hit them with this other piece here. They had to do most of their services manually. Only a couple of locations were able to take payments. This was pretty upsetting and really damaged a lot of stuff there. Checkpoint researched the attack, believes this campaign is related to Hermes, which is tied to North Korean actors. So we're talking about nation states being involved here, right? Now, when we talk about ransomware, this is a key thing I want you to think about here as you hear about ransomware, you hear about these things throughout this megacast. Some of the things that they're trying to do, ransomware as a service, is one of the things that I think is going to be a game changer. We see more and more strains doing this. Basically what this is the attackers here, now what they do is they rent out the infrastructure. So the people performing the attacks don't have to be technical at all. They can buy into a strain of ransomware, and then they just need to send the emails out and try to sucker people into launching it, all right? The way this works is there's a couple of models, but it's inexpensive. Philadelphia, last I saw, was about $380 for a lifetime license, completely customizable. There's actually a YouTube video on customizing it. There's Dot, which is free, doesn't cost you anything to get into, 50-50 split of profits. Saturn and even Cerber, which is a common variety, has been ported over to a RaaS model, free to buy into, and a 70-30 split. Meaning the attackers, the affiliate that they call them, get 70% of the proceeds, where the malware developer only gets 30%, but they don't have to do anything. All they have to do is write the code. They deal with, the Bitcoin collection or whatever type of cryptocurrency they're planning on doing. They deal with all that stuff on the back end. It all happens pretty magically. But again, it costs them nothing to get into this. And that's one of the reasons I think we need to pay special attention to this and think about, how are we going to recover from these things if it ever happens? And how do we get in front of it? Now, I love this. I've been using this for a while. I absolutely love this. The person that drew this was a prophet in my mind. Okay. This is basically highlighting micro ransoms. And this is something else we need to think about as we continue to add things to our networks and our organizations, right? Some of the things on here, you got the thermostat on the wall, turning off the heat until you warm up my bank account. You just dropped $200 on a smart thermostat. Would you be willing to pay $25, $30 in ransom to get it back? Probably, right? you have the, I love the dishwasher. Your dirty dishes can wait. I'm busy mining Bitcoins. I love that. That's another type of attack that we're seeing with ransomware, as well. You've got the door thing over there. Next time you leave, it'll cost you $100. Now, we've seen many attacks that are based on this too. The door thing. We've seen hotels actually get hit with ransomware, and it's taken down their key card system. So people cannot get into their rooms with their key cards. We've seen even larger buildings hit with ransomware where their HVAC controls are taken down by ransomware. They can't control the heat or the cooling. We've seen all kinds of stuff like this happen, right? I think my favorite's the broom in the bottom corner. Send me $25 or I'll tell everyone on your social network you were stupid enough to buy an internet-connected broom. Well, that kind of brings to my point, we keep connecting these things to the networks. We keep connecting all sorts of things to the internet. We have to understand the risk that we put ourselves at, not only because these things can be ransomed, but also because these can be a pivot point for ransomware as well. As we start seeing these things, these smart devices more and more in our organizations, in meeting rooms and conference rooms and things like that, we start connecting these. We got to understand what the implications of that really are. Now, the tricky thing is spotting this stuff some of the times, right? We see that endpoint protection, not always great at spotting this sort of thing. And what we found actually is that a lot of times endpoint protection is not configured correctly. Maybe some things aren't turned on. There's actually some tools to help you with here. We have a free tool. It's called Ransom. This basically, what it does is it creates and encrypts some files to see if your endpoint protection is tuned to be able to see the actions of the encryption, okay? So you want something that's more than just signature-based. You want something that's going to go, hey, this user is all of a sudden encrypting, 200 files a second. We need to look at this and stop that process. This is to help you tune that. I highly recommend, if you haven't already, just give this a shot. It also looks for crypto mining, some things like that, but this is one of the tools you can use to help you with that. Again, totally free. That's the whole point here, is free. Another thing is, phishing is the way it's getting through. This is a great way to check. It's called the MSA, the Mail Server Security Assessment. Free tool, again, helps you understand what can get through your mail server and to your inbox. So many times we have all these different filters running that sometimes we don't even know exactly what ends up getting through. So this will certainly help you do that. So I just want to give you a couple tools to work with here to keep an eye on that sort of thing. We know that phishing is the major way that this is going on. So let's try to get in front of it by making sure that these things are in place and working correctly. Now, when it comes to dealing with people, this is where it gets a little tricky, right? Technology is easy for us to think about, but sometimes the human factor is not our forte. So I want to talk a little bit about training your people. It is the number one way to stop this, all right? Get people to quit clicking the links, quit doing the dangerous behaviors that they do, all right? You get a phishing email, you spot it for what it is, you report it, and you move on, as opposed to launching these things. And, that's just how most of this gets through. The problem is security awareness programs that we've been using traditionally, a lot of them are done for compliance. You check the box, you say, okay, you do training once a year. Let me ask you something, in all honesty, do you think training once a year is going to help with something like this? I mean, I hope your answer is no, because it really doesn't. What happens is, essentially, we end up in a situation where this has happened so long ago, people forget about it. Okay, other things come up, other things go on, they quit paying attention for it just because they forget. So what we like to do is we like to do simulated phishing attacks to go along with it. The idea is it always kind of keeps them a little bit paranoid about it. They're like, hey, you know what? I wonder if this weird email I just got is one of those IT guy ones, okay? And that's fantastic. You want them doing that. But it also gives them a chance to take what they learned in the training and practice it in a hands-on, fail-safe way, right? So you taught them how to identify these things. Let's let them practice it on an ongoing basis. We say at least once a month. That's where we find it's most valuable. And then if they do mess up, your network isn't burning. And that's a very important thing. We would rather not have to put our disaster recovery plans into place if we can avoid it, right? So this is some of the key things there. Now, when it comes to protecting your organization, I got 5 things I really like to focus on. Train your users, have weapons grade backups. You're going to be hearing about that. Disaster recovery is key. After you've trained your users, hopefully you can avoid it. You're going to need that backups. You got to have them. So this is going to be another key thing here. If you want to restore from ransomware, this is the way you do it, folks. Too many times I've seen people have backups online on a network, on a share, that are encrypted by the ransomware itself. So you got to learn and think a little bit about those sorts of things. And I'm sure that'll be covered as we move in here. Segment the network so that not everybody can connect to everyone else. If you look at what happened with WannaCry, if they'd have been segmented, probably would have been a lot less issue than they ended up having. Principle of least privilege, since most of this stuff launches itself in the context of the user that launched it. In other words, if your receptionist launches it, it's going to use their permissions to try to spread, okay? So don't make everybody an admin everywhere. I know this is kind of, 101 stuff, but unfortunately we find that it's missed quite a bit. So then these people have more permissions that they need, and next thing you know, the marketing share is wiped out by someone in accounting or vice versa, okay? Remove internet-facing RDP. I say that because far too often we're finding misconfigurations or, frankly, they're getting hit so much by SamSam coming in through internet-facing RDP. Do yourself a favor, VPN first, and then do your RDP session from there. It's just more secure that way. And then finally, keep up with patches. I'll say this, most of these things use exploits that are not 0 days. They are patchable. However, we know that there are some machines that are very difficult to patch out there. Try to mitigate it through something else. Even if you can't patch, try to mitigate it. Maybe you segment it to its own area and limit who it can talk to one other machine on the network, some things like that. So those are kind of my 5, well, by 5 I mean 6 ways to protect your organization there, right? Now, when it comes to awareness programs, look, it's really not that hard. 4 steps: baseline test, train the users, fish the users, watch the results. Those things right there, that's the key to it, okay? Train them, fish them, continue to fish them every month. Look at the results. As they get better, what's going to happen is you're going to make them a little bit tougher. And then you continue to kind of do that, lather, rinse, repeat. I even think you need to train your users maybe once a quarter. Send out a 3 to 5 minute sort of thing. Nothing crazy, just real quick and easy. Just a reminder, just to keep it fresh in their mind. Focus on something that's coming up, something that you think may be going on, like, first of the year, there's lots of tax scams out there getting people to click on things like that. So why not put out something out there that, talks a little bit about, hey, expect to see some of this, right? So you just kind of keep running through those 4 steps. And the result of that is actually very impressive. This is 6 million users, 11,000 organizations. All right, so huge sample size, 27% initial click rate. At about 90 days, just by training them and running them through 1 or 2 of the phishing things, it's down to 13% click rate. So that's cut it over in half right there. And what's really impressive is at the end of the year, it's at 2.17% for those same users. That click rate has dropped down to next to nothing, right? And if you look actually between months 6 and 7, you'll see it kind of tapers, it levels off right there. That's kind of where you see that make it tougher. As they get better, make it tougher part. Your click rate will go up, but what this does is it drives towards the fact that 2% click rate is on tougher emails than the 27% click rate. Let that sit in for a moment. It is remarkable what you can do with your users just by training them to avoid having to go through the disaster recovery process. And, everyone, disaster recovery vendors as well, will say you want to try to avoid it first. That's kind of the goal there. So that being said, got those couple of resources to share with you. We can do a free security test, phishing test for you. See what your baseline is if you want. That ransomware simulator, again, it's a great tool to make sure your endpoint protection is properly configured. And then the MSA I really like, because when I managed Exchange servers and mail servers in the past, it's always been a challenge to see exactly what it is that things are getting blocked there. It's a great tool for that. So That being said, whew, that was pretty high speed. That's about all I have for slides, but I'm reasonably sure we probably have a couple questions.
Yeah, great job, Eric. Great presentation. Very educational. Love the free tools, of course, and I know the audience does as well. We do have some questions coming in for you here from the audience. Let's see. First one, what about antivirus on workstations? Will this protect me against ransomware?
You know, there are some that say antivirus is dead. I'll say this. I think that endpoint protection is actually very important to have. However, I do want to preface that with the antivirus, the traditional antivirus that works on signatures, things just move too fast for it these days. The new strains, they work around that all the time. So what you want is you want some sort of endpoint protection that has that either an AI component or heuristic or something like that, where, for example, in that ransom tool, where it actually sees that an activity is happening and that is unusual, and it takes the steps with that. So I think you definitely have to have it, but I think it has to be more than just the traditional signature-based stuff.
Yeah, great point. We need much smarter antivirus to provide some true protection than the signature-based tools. Let's see. Other question here, they're asking, can I create different awareness training lessons for different groups or departments in my company?
Yeah, you know, that comes up quite a bit. What I think what we need to do with this, and the approach I like to take is, I think everybody in the organization needs the same basic training, okay? And what that does is that gives you a foundation to build from. If everybody's heard the same message, they end up, it becomes more of a cultural thing where everybody understands. And then from there, what you want to do is you want to focus on the individual threats. In other words, people that are in finance are going to be targets for things like business email compromise or CEO fraud, where somebody basically sends a message and says, I want you to wire a bunch of money off, right? So you want to train them against that. If you have people that are working with PHI, obviously HIPAA comes into play, or, you know, PCI for those. Those are some little add-ons that you can do. And I don't think they have to be very long, but I do think you have to take those extra steps to make sure that those folks that are going to be targeted, or most likely going to be targeted for those specific things, have that extra little bit of training. And it doesn't always have to be at the same time as the main training, okay? So you do like your annual training, maybe a 45-minute for everybody in the organization, and then follow up in 3 weeks or so, and start in with the more focused stuff on some of these other groups, and then continue on, like I said, at least quarterly. Throw a little nugget at them to get them to think about things.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, perhaps the executives need, you know, specific ransomware training above and beyond what perhaps someone just, you know, driving a forklift or working a cash register might require. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, you think about executives, their names and email addresses are oftentimes posted out there. They're a bigger target than anyone else, in that their information tends to be more available, okay? Executives also need to know what's going on, because a lot of times these attackers will use their authority to get other people to do things. So your executives need to understand that folks are going to try to spoof who they are and get other people to do things on their behalf. And where that leads to is that leads to people being okay with, you know, the executives being okay if your financial controller calls them before making a large, you know, transfer of funds, or like sending out W-2s. You know, they call them up and they say, hey, you know, I got this email. I know it's you, sir, ma'am, but I just wanted to make sure that's okay, that you did, in fact, order this transfer of funds, or you were trying to get us to, you know, to follow this link. We've seen where accounts have been compromised and stuff using the executives. So I think it's important that everybody, including the executives, understand that, you know, these sorts of things happen, and sort of how their place in it is going to be affecting the organization.
Yeah, great point. And then let's see, finally, the last question I think we have time for is, can you kind of walk us through like the steps we would take to test our network for ransomware vulnerability, and how long does that typically take?
Yeah, I mean, some of the things that I would do, you know, when I'm looking at a network, I'm looking at a couple of different things. And Ransomware has evolved pretty much to where it does spread rather quickly, right? In the beginning, basically it hit a workstation or so, and that was that. But now that it's got worm features and it's moving around a little bit, you need to look at where people can get to with standard user permissions. Again, locking down your network shares. If your receptionist doesn't need access to the accounting folder, don't let them have access to that. Sometimes these things it's not just enough to to hide them with a $ share or something like that. You need to make sure that the permissions are locked down. Check your segmentation. Can they physically get to another box? If your receptionist can get to a login screen on a SQL server in production, you got issues, right? Those are some quick and easy things to do there. Again, those tools though, like Ransom is a great way to check your endpoint protection. Look at some of the logs. Make sure your logging is doing well and you can see what's going on if people are moving around. I see that misconfigured quite a bit. So basically look at those sorts of things and see what you can spot.
Great advice. It's always great having you on the events. Thanks so much for being here today, Eric.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
For more information on KnowBe4, visit their website, knowbe4.com. Also, check out the resource that's available for download right there in your audience console. Our first Amazon $500 gift card. While I do so, I'm going to pop up the next poll question on the screen. The question there is, how many people work at your company? Just select the answer that corresponds to you and your company, and we'll get out the magic ball machine like they use in the lottery here and select our random prize winner. Actually, we're using the randomizer, random.org. And Amazon $500 gift card is going out to Eric Nordman from New Hampshire. Congratulations to you, Eric. Stay tuned if you are not Eric Nordman from New Hampshire, because we've got 5 iPad Pros and 5 more Amazon $500 gift cards to give out on today's event. All right, looks like most everyone there has responded to the poll. Let me share the results with you. And let's take a look at that. 25% say they are at 100 to 500 employee companies. And I know we got an extra 0 there on the last option, should be 10,000 plus. That is 15% of you represented out there in the audience. And then a real good representation all in between. Mid-sized companies, 500 to 1,000, 10%. All the way down to 1 to 25 person small companies, 4% on the event. So thank you for responding to that poll question. It's now my pleasure to introduce Mr. Max Lindauer, Technical Marketing Specialist at Unitrends. Max, are you with us?
I am, David.
Thanks for being on the event. Take it away.
Thanks for having me, and thanks everybody for being here today. Like David mentioned, my name is Max Lindauer. I'm one of the pre-sales engineers on the marketing side here to talk about the Unitrends solution and how it can help you manage your disaster recovery planning, our DR as a service offering, and ransomware detection as part of an overall all-in-one backup and disaster recovery solution. So just in general, to give kind of high-level information on where we're at in IT, being in IT is a precarious position these days. The amount of data growth that you have to manage is exponential. The amount that data is growing 33 times faster than the actual number of people in IT that are managing it, right? Over 2.5 quintillion bytes of data are created every day. More data is created in the past 2 years than in the previous 5,000 years of human history, and that continues onward every year. So this screams for simplicity. Having an overall solution that can help you manage, protect, and recover this data quickly is the goal of the Unitrends offering. And beyond just data growth, there are a lot of threats out there. Ransomware is obviously a hot topic, one of the topics of the webinar series today. Over 60% of businesses in the United States have been attacked by ransomware, and of those, 66%, 2/3 were down for more than a day. So that's a huge cost to the business in terms of downtime and the overall effect of ransomware. Just as an example, right, last year the Petra ransomware attack cost the shipping company Maersk over $300 million. A little bit more recently, the city of Atlanta was hit by a ransomware attack, cost them millions of dollars to get back up and running. I think those guys that actually sent out the ransomware attack were recently arrested. Ransomware is now being packaged as a service, ransomware as a service, so the folks who are actually sending out these attacks don't even need to have a tremendous amount of technical know-how to get into your system. And we're seeing in terms of backup that ransomware is now specifically targeting backups, especially Windows-based backup solutions, to encrypt your backup data first to put you in a place where you really have no choice but to pay their ransom. And beyond ransomware, downtime in general is just really expensive. On average, the cost of a data center outage can be upwards of $9,000 per minute. Obviously, depending on your business, that kind of number can vary, but at the end of the day, being down costs a lot of money in terms of revenue loss and in terms of those corrective actions that need to be taken to bring everything back. So in global of the United States last year, IT downtime cost North American businesses $700 billion. So there's a huge cost here to not being able to recover your data quickly, and that's what we're here to address. So what problems does Unitrends actually address? It addresses the local backup piece and offsite, and again, just to kind of give that general information of who we are as a company, Unitrends is a long-term player in the backup and DR space, been around since the late 80s, doing bare metal backup and recovery of Unix systems. Today, in 2018, we have over 30,000 customers globally, protecting physical, virtual environments, protecting over 2 exabytes of data with an industry-leading 99% customer satisfaction rating. This is the case in large part because our support team is 100% US-based down in Columbia, South Carolina. I'm up here in Boston, Massachusetts at our sales and corporate headquarters. So in terms of what problems Unitrends solves, like I mentioned, it's local backup, making sure you have that long-term data compliance, the retention, getting your data off-site, as well as automating DR in our own Unitrends cloud, as well as third-party clouds. We can even help with migrating your local infrastructure up to the cloud, as well as protecting cloud workloads, as well as SaaS offerings like Office 365. And all of that is supported with our proactive ransomware detection. Uses artificial intelligence and machine learning to understand normal behavior of all of your machines, and then give you an alert, flag that back up if the behavior was indicative of ransomware to allow you to get back up and running quickly. So in terms of where we fit, how does Unitrends fit into your overall environment? We have 2 main solutions locally. We either have our all-in-one physical appliance, which ranges from 2 to 120 terabytes, as well as we have our software solution, which is just a virtual appliance, a Linux-based VM that would be deployed in your VMware, Hyper-V, Nutanix AHV, or Xen hypervisor environments. And through that local network, we're able to protect physical systems, virtual environments, NAS devices through NFS, CIFS, NDMP, as well as applications natively like SQL, Oracle, Exchange, and SharePoint. So through that local network, we're deduplicating and compressing all of the data, seeing on average a data reduction ratio of about 25:1. And then from there, we copy your data off-site, either to cold media like a disk or tape or NAS, or even public clouds like AWS, Google Cloud, Rackspace, as well as the ability to do hot replication to your own private recovery site with an instance of Unitrends installed, or to the Unitrends cloud where we offer DR as a service. And that's all supported by what we call recovery assurance, which is the ability to automatically test the validity of your backups. It actually spins up your backups, tests against your RPO and RTO, and actually runs executable tests within each machine so that you understand that the application data is valid, file level data is valid, as well as compliant with your recovery goals and, of course, recoverable. So with our DR as a service, we have a pretty unique offering in terms of hard recovery SLA. So talking about what is a recovery SLA, it's an agreement, in this case contractual, regarding how much downtime or data loss you will occur in that disaster event. So in terms of what goes into building that SLA, of course, we need to understand your recovery point objectives, how frequently you're running these backups, your recovery time objectives, how quickly do you need everything back up and running. And then, of course, an SLA wouldn't really be worth its salt if there wasn't some recourse available if those goals were not met. So recovery point objective, just to highlight if those aren't familiar, this is how much data loss will you accept. And this is measured by the time between working valid recovery points, the frequency of those backups that you're running. Recovery time objective is how much downtime will I accept? How quickly can I get not only your servers up and running, but the applications within them to be available and running at production level quality. So in terms of recourse, this is self-explanatory. What's the penalty? Is it going to be a financial recourse? Is it going to be credit? Is there going to be some sort of job loss? Or is there nothing, right? Without some recourse, then SLA isn't worth much. And take a look at your own business continuity plan right now. If you don't hit your SLA, what your goals of recovery time, do you have that defined and documented as a SLA? And most likely, it's not happening. And there are reasons for that. It's generally around the fact that SLAs are difficult to put in place because of a lack of accountability, lack of confidence in your ability to recover. Understanding the actual impact of that recovery is incredibly difficult. So having a solution like Unitrends can help automate that and get you with a guaranteed recovery time. So through our analytics, machine learning, and automation, we're able to proactively let you know the impact of an outage, automatically test your DR recovery for compliance, allow you to get an insight into any kind of security threats like ransomware or any other malware activities, as well as provisioning test and dev environments directly from the appliance's resources. So really cool way to automate and guarantee recovery time will meet those goals using that recovery assurance feature. And then as well, we're also proactively opening support cases if things are not behaving normally. If disks are failing, we'll overnight a new drive to the Unitrends customers if we proactively can tell that a disk is going to fail. So in terms of how we help with disaster recovery, ransomware detection, there's a few different ways we can do this. So if you're looking at the public cloud, at AWS or Microsoft Azure, if you're using VMware locally, we have a great solution called Boomerang, which will take the block level data of your VMware VMs, take that VMDK snapshot data, and migrate it up to S3 or blob storage within Azure. If there is a disaster, then you can go in and manually convert that into a running AMI file in EC2 or compute storage. And then when you're ready for failback, it'll send all of that data back to your local VMware environment. So again, this is something you would manage. It's not quite DR as a service. It's DR within the public clouds that you're managing, but it's a great low-cost option if you're already utilizing those clouds and you have VMware locally. In terms of the Unitrends cloud, how we can provide you that all-in-one solution, we like to think of this in an old world versus a new world mentality. In the old world, there's a lot of different solutions patched together, public cloud, backup software, third-party hardware that work, but there can oftentimes be a lot of fine-tuning and finger-pointing if things go wrong. With the new world, with that all-in-one approach that we offer with Unitrends, there's one throat to choke. There's not going to be finger-pointing. You're supported through that 100% US-based support team, and we give you that guarantee of recovery in the Unitrends cloud. So in terms of cloud, how do we differ from the public cloud offerings? Unitrends offers DR as a service for both physical Windows servers and virtual environments like VMware and Hyper-V. There's not going to be any finger pointing, and we're able to offer that 1-hour recovery SLA with automated recovery testing, giving you confidence that you'll actually be able to recover within that time allotted. Another major difference is pricing. The way we price out our cloud is there's no ingress or egress fees. That's part of what we mean by purpose-built for backup and DR. We don't want to penalize any one of our customers for actually utilizing the cloud for replicating or bringing data back. So we price it out based on how much data you're protecting locally, and then the retention that you're looking for. At a minimum, we give you 90 days retention, and then we go all the way up past 7 years to infinite retention as well. So you choose how much data you're protecting, what retention window you're looking for, and then if you're looking for that DR as a service spin up in the cloud, you can choose the 1-hour SLA for specific machines, a 24-hour SLA for others, and there's also a best effort no SLA offering that's lowest cost as well. So in terms of how this DR as a service offering actually works, locally you're running physical servers, virtual environments, and applications that are critical to your business, right? Your users are connected to that local site. In the event of a disaster, you would just call our support team, declare a disaster. We would have already run through recovery testing and a general playbook that you fill out based on boot order, local IP, network mask, gateway. So we'll spin up your environment within that SLA to mimic your local site so that to the outside world, none of those machines will have changed, and there will just be a blip of downtime while we're recovering everything within that SLA. Then through an SSL VPN connection or a direct IPsec tunnel, your users will connect to your local site hosted in our cloud on a private VLAN. We'll then take all that data, load it up on a new appliance, and when you're ready to rebuild your environment, we'll send that new appliance to you for you to rebuild. Now, then you'll load up all that data. When you're ready for failback, we'll take all the changes that have occurred in your environment since we sent you that appliance, load it up on a NAS, and then ship that NAS device back to you to then get all of your data back to the most current point in time, back up and running on your local site. After that, we'll send you a new prep kit, and you can capture any changes for future failover. So it's a really simple, hands-off, white glove service, pretty much a turnkey solution. I'd say set it and forget it, but I don't know if backups are something you completely want to forget about, but you can set up email notification so that you understand everything that's going on without having to babysit and manually intervene often with the solution itself. So a really quick and easy way to ensure that you can get your environment up within that 1 or 24-hour SLA that you choose. And really our general goal here is to help our customers follow best practices, not only to just back up your data and then do recoveries when you need, but to make sure your backups are in a secure environment. And this is often overlooked, right? Having a Windows backup solution, though it may be easy to deploy, does not leave your backup data in a very secure place, right? And a lot of ransomware now is targeting Windows-based backup solutions specifically, especially the more popular ones. We've seen countless current customers who are using other solutions have their backup data encrypted and then move to a solution like Unitrends that's actually built on a CentOS operating system on that hardened Linux platform. Of course, testing, which is often ignored. This is one of the most important things you can do to really ensure your ability to recover. I like to think of backups in some ways as like a Schrodinger's cat. Just because the backup says it's good, just because you have a green check mark, doesn't mean that recovery is going to be seamless, right? Things can happen. In IT, things do happen. So doing testing frequently is really important, but often the time and bandwidth is not there to really accomplish that manually. That's where our automated recovery testing can really help out. And then, of course, detection is new. We have that ransomware detection built in. So all the backups that come in, we're testing for any abnormal behavior that's indicative of ransomware. And then, of course, your ability to recover. And to talk about that ransomware detection, or sorry, the automated testing piece, I want to just highlight how this looks in the interface. So jumping to the dashboard here, this is the first thing you'd see in the Unitrends console as you sign in. You see summary tiles, your backup summary, replication summary, and here's that recovery assurance tile at the bottom. So we're actually taking your backups, spinning them up based on the boot order that you designate, on the isolated network that you choose, testing against the RPO and RTO that you select, as well as running executable tests that let you know that the application data is valid as well. So you're able to proactively understand what the impact of an outage would be and address issues as they come up. Now, just because there's an issue during a recovery test, that's not the end of the world. That's why you test, right? You want to understand any recovery issues proactively so that it's not something that's biting you in the back end in an actual DR event when revenue is being lost and your boss is breathing down your neck. So this is the report that would be sent out through email as well as accessible in the interface. We have a lot of HIPAA customers in healthcare as well as finance that have specific auditing requirements for recovery testing. By automating this, we're able to offload that responsibility and give those auditors the verification that recovery testing is actually being done and that compliance is being tested for. And then last piece, that ransomware detection, we're able to give you that higher level of ransomware detection and protection because we're built on hardened Linux OS, which is not foolproof by any means, but does give you that added advantage, as well as the proactive ransomware detection by understanding through machine learning and artificial intelligence what normal behavior is. So we're not testing for the ransomware itself. It comes in so many different types of forms, but we're testing for abnormal behavior that's indicative of ransomware. So we flag that back up, prevent replication, and then allow you to quickly go back to a previously tested point in time and recover. So wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't give you guys a call to action to visit our website, check out our software, our solution, and you can even request a demo by someone like myself. I do public demos daily, or you can get a more personalized demo with one of our other SEs, as well as we have a trial solution that would deploy as a VM. We have engineers who can walk you through and set you up according to best practices. So obviously I'm a little biased. I have the Unitrends label on my shirt. I love Unitrends, but if you want to hear a more unbiased opinion about how great the solution is, talk to our customers. That 99% customer satisfaction rating really speaks for itself. We have over 95% customer retention on all of our contracts, so that our customers love it. One of my favorite parts about my job is I get to go around to different parts of the country through events like VMworld or Ignite or different IT roadshows and talk to current customers. I was in Spice World in Austin and got to talk to a lot of great Unitrends customers there who love the support. At the end of the day is the most amazing piece of it. Not only does the solution work, but if anything goes wrong or you have questions, you can quickly address them with someone US-based, either through chat or the phone. So just a quick run through of some larger Unitrends customers that you might recognize. And at the end of the day, what we're offering our customers is a unified, all-in-one backup and continuity solution that reduces the amount of work that you have to use to actually manage it, give you both local and cloud continuity in a secure Linux purpose-built environment with 100% US-based support with no finger pointing because it's all managed through one vendor. So again, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. We're always doing different webinars like this and lunch and learn events at different cities around the country and different webinars with cash prizes as well. So please check us out and see what we got going on.
Great presentation, Max. We do have some
Thank
questions
you,
here for you from the audience if you're ready.
I'm ready.
All right. So the first question, Dan here, he's asking, do you have any advice on how to determine the bandwidth requirements for DRaaS?
It's a great question. Be curious to understanding a little bit more about what that's referring to. So in terms of getting all of your data to the cloud, we do offer some services specifically called Rapid Seed. So the biggest challenge with getting all of the data to the cloud is just the initial seed of all of your data, right? From that point on, we're just replicating incremental data, just the delta from day to day or hour to hour, whatever your backup frequency is. We will ship you a NAS device. You'll load up all the data locally on that NAS, mail it back to us for that initial seed, and from there on, it's just incremental data. In terms of connecting to your environment, not a huge amount of bandwidth is required, right? Because you're just connecting through a VPN connection for those endpoints to connect to that network to access the applications or the server. So limited bandwidth is not going to rule you out. To get kind of more specifics on your environment, I would definitely advise reaching out to our sales team, getting on the phone with a sales engineer and talking through your particular circumstances. But through Rapid Seed and through that IPsec tunnel connection or VPN, bandwidth should not be an issue.
Okay. And for those out in the audience, I just popped up a poll question on the screen. You might want to check that out. I appreciate your answer on that. I will share that in just a moment. Max, another question here they're asking about is, how do you choose between a hardware appliance versus the virtual appliance?
That's a great question. I mean, at the end of the day, this is America, right? So dollars make decisions. Not ignorant of that fact here in the software world. So the hardware appliance and the virtual appliance are the same technology, going to give you the same feature sets. The real difference is pricing and whether you have your own hardware to host a backup system. So our hardware appliance, there's no licensing. It's no limits licensing is the term. So it's just a capacity-based pricing model, right? We have the 2 terabyte box. They range all the way to 120. Depending on the size of your environment, that'll dictate what size appliance you're looking for, as well as the retention. You can run multiple appliances through the same interface if you have multiple sites you're looking to protect or your data set is larger than that 120 terabytes offers. So there is a way to kind of converge them and run them as one. With the virtual appliance, you're using your own hardware. We're not able to proactively support the disks and the hardware there. That's licensed based on the number of CPU sockets, the physical sockets on the virtual host you're protecting, and the number of physical servers. So at the end of the day, it's a pricing question as well as a resource question. So same solution, but that's kind of at least how I would think about it going into that process.
Okay, great advice. I mean, can the virtual appliance back up a physical host? Is that possible? Yeah,
absolutely. And there's a lot. I mean, you can even take a physical backup of a Windows server and then pre-build it as an offline virtual machine. We call that a replica, so that if the physical server ever went down, that replica is just ready to boot up, and it's updated to the latest recovery point that you have, and you can choose multiple recovery points as well. The physical appliance you're able to actually use as a failover server, so you can actually run those Windows systems off of the appliance if they were to go down as well. So it really kind of comes down to what resources you have available at your disposal and, of course, pricing.
Okay. And then let's see, Donovan here, he's asking, how do you scale above 500 terabytes of DR data from a single site? So I guess the question is about scalability. How does the Unitrends solution scale up?
That's a great question, and it's one of the things that the solution does really well. So you can run multiple appliances, so you can get 6 120 appliances, 120 terabyte appliances, and run them through the same interface. Another option is if you have your own storage. Our virtual appliance, the storage is expandable, right? So you would just direct attach storage to the virtual appliance, which is just a Linux-based VM. Say, for example, on VMware, if you have a NAS, you can connect that NAS through iSCSI, present it as a data store to the VMware host, and then add that storage directly to the virtual appliance. So either or option would be great and would be a good way to go about it.
Okay. And then let's see, last question here we probably have time for. They're asking, when it comes to DRaaS, are you able to do a full DR cutover test to ensure that it will work before an actual DR event? How does that process work, Max?
Yeah, it's a great question, David, and it works the same way as it would work locally. So we're doing that recovery assurance test. So we have automated recovery testing built in. So we give you the full understanding of how a recovery would go by actually doing full testing based on your boot order and executable test that you've decided. We also give you the option to do a full cutover test. You get 30 days as part of the DR as a service offering a year. You can use any of those 30 days for testing as well as for actual production failover, right? And we're not the kind of company where if your 30 days comes to an end and you haven't rebuilt yet, we're not just going to shut down your environment. We can kind of extend that out with like a little per DM fee, but it's very simple to do testing, and I certainly encourage doing DR testing, especially if it's hosted on a secondary site, so that you feel confident in your ability to recover.
Okay, very nice. And then is there a evaluation version available of Unitrends, Max?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a 30-day free trial. The virtual appliance can be deployed. And we have engineers like myself and other folks who can actually get set up through WebEx and run through configuring all of the clients for backup, setting up the backup schedule, testing recoveries, and making sure that the solution actually works the way you need it to, and that it can handle your key success criteria. So we also can do try and buys for the physical appliance if you don't have a virtual environment or the resources to host it. I would definitely reach out to the sales team to get going on a process for that trial, or you can trial it yourself. There's a lot of information for best practices for deployment through our support page and KnowBe information. But it's always helpful to have a helping hand like myself or another engineer who can walk you through everything.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we got good feedback as well. Let's see. Who was it in here? Joseph. He said, we love Unitrends and use it in our data center. So love to hear that kind of feedback. Also, great comments on your presentation. Thanks for being on the event today, Max.
Yep. Thanks so much, David. Thanks, everybody. Hope to see you soon.
All right, for more information, visit unitrends.com. Also check out the resource that's available right there in your handouts tab. Let me share the results of this poll question with you. Looks like 39% of you say that your DR system is current and ready to go. Kudos to you. Really great to hear that. But it looks like there's also another, 61% that say, we either don't have a DR system in place, our DR system needs updating, or we don't really know the status of our DR system. So 61% of you on the event today probably need to have, spend a little time working on DR. I really appreciate that feedback. That's great to know, great feedback. And thank you everyone for answering that poll question. With that, it's my pleasure. Oh, wait, before I introduce Ryan, I know some of you are wondering who won the prizes. I want to make sure I don't forget about that. Our next Amazon $500 gift card is going out to Lance Davis of Arizona. And our first grand prize, an Apple iPad Pro, is going to Dawn Lewis of Idaho. Congratulations to both of you. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Ryan Seagal, Product Marketing Specialist at Zerto. Ryan, are you with us?
I am indeed. Can you hear me all right?
I can, yeah. Thanks for being on. Take it away. Thanks
for having me. And thank you to everyone for joining the webinar today. Obviously, our topic of conversation today is obviously disaster recovery as service, and specifically ransomware, and looking at the types of disruptions that can occur to your business on any given day, and really how to be able to effectively handle those should they inevitably occur. So, starting on the topic of ransomware here, we sort of looked at this survey that was done, I believe, last year, and it surveyed about 165 different IT people within IT departments, and that was across the United States, the UK, different parts of EMEA, as well as Canada. But we can see that the impact from ransomware was absolutely massive. I mean, in 2017 alone, it cost companies $300 million, and that's not a global figure. That's just for these companies surveyed. Within 1 month, we saw nearly 56,000 infections and over 100 different ransomware families. And finance and healthcare were what we found to be the most targeted verticals of these companies. And now, when we're continuing to look at the impact, obviously with ransomware, people want you to pay up. They come in, they encrypt your files, they demand this ransom in order to give you access back to your data. So of these surveyed individuals, 54% of organizations were effective. The average, cost or ransom that was demanded was $1,200, and 4 out of 5 of these companies had to recover from backup with an average recovery time of 8 hours. So being down for 8 hours, especially when you look at, recent reports from IDC and Gartner, and you look at the cost of downtime, on average, at the low end of the spectrum, it's a few $1,000s per minute. Now, when you're down for hours and hours, that can quickly become very, very impactful to the business. And that's not even mentioning that about only half or less than half of these companies were even able to successfully recover their data. Now, ransomware really is only just one piece of the puzzle. There are a ton of different things that can go wrong in your business, from obviously ransomware and security issues, infrastructure failures, depending on maybe where you sit geographically, natural disasters. Some areas are more prone to others. But then there's user errors. Someone deletes a file or deletes an email, things that are totally out of your control that you cannot plan for. Now, these disruptions, they are a drain on time, they're a drain on staff, they're a drain on budget, and being able to handle these unplanned outages needs to be simple, it needs to be automated, and it needs to cover 100% of your business requirements while minimizing resource and processes involved. So continuing along, not only are there unplanned outages, the things that you really can't control, but there's also these what we call planned disruptions. They are beneficial and they help move the business forward, but things like mergers and acquisitions, trying to grow your network and grow your business and move to the cloud or consolidate data centers in order to save on resources, save money, reduce your data center footprint, move to OpEx models as opposed to CapEx models, and maintenance and upgrades. These are beneficial, but they're also disruptive, and you need to be able to react more efficiently to the unplanned so you have more time and resources to focus on the planned disruptions. Those are the ones that drive innovation and business value. Do you mind advancing, David? And the idea of being able to make the shift within your IT organization and within your business to be able to effectively handle both planned and unplanned outages, that's what we refer to as IT resilience. And that's really what Zerto is all about. So I want to just give you a little bit of idea about Zerto as a company and where we came to market originally and how we have evolved our company over the last 10 years or so. So we came to market in 2011, and we were the first hypervisor-based replication company. So what we did is we brought you out of the the traditional physical layer of replicating data, and we moved replication up to the hypervisor, and that brought a ton of benefits, like being able to replicate independent of storage arrays or where your data was located, whether they were spread across different hosts or clusters or data stores. And then we were the first in taking you across hypervisor and into the public cloud. And as we began to build out our platform, we added flexibility so you could come back from the cloud if maybe the cloud that you chose wasn't right for you, or maybe just business initiatives has changed. So we really started developing our technology to be much more agile and allow you the flexibility and agility to build out your IT organization and processes the way that made most sense for your business. And in just recently in May of this year at our annual UserCon conference, ZertoCon, we announced our IT resilience platform. And now what Zerto is really starting to do is, we are converging our technology because we see a convergence within the marketplace, a convergence between disaster recovery, backup, and cloud mobility. And we're converging these three traditionally separate processes into one simple, scalable, and easy-to-use IT resilience platform. And delivering IT resilience is really based upon these three key pillars. First and foremost is continuous availability. The idea that with today's modern consumers and end users, downtime is simply not acceptable. If you can't deliver to me the services or products that I expect from you, I'm going to take my business elsewhere. Or if I'm an end user within your company and I am unable to leverage your IT services to effectively do my job, you're paying me for nothing, and this is essentially costing the business a ton of money and resources. So giving you a full spectrum for complete data protection, obviously being able to handle things like ransomware attacks, and on a much broader spectrum, really any outage and disruption that has an impact to your business. Second pillar of IT resilience is workload mobility. I'm sure that you guys know, as IT professionals and being in the industry as long as you have, things change. Technology is always evolving, and you need to be ready and able to evaluate new technologies, and should they make sense and be beneficial for your business, you need to be able to react to that, whether it's infrastructure modernization, consolidations and migrations, or having a dedicated environment for testing and DevOps to be able to roll out new services and products to your consumers. You need to have that ability to really move workloads to, from, and between destinations with ease. And the last piece of IT resilience is multi-cloud agility. I think that we can all agree that cloud is becoming much more of a norm in IT, and if you currently aren't already invested in the cloud, I'd be willing to wager that, but in the next 12 to 18 months, you will probably have an initiative coming from top down in your organization to start evaluating the cloud, to see how you can generate new revenue streams and break into new industries and really move your business forward. So that to us is really what IT resilience is about. And delivering IT resilience to your customers and your end users really is based on a foundation of continuous data protection, right? So always having a point in time, a clean copy of data that you can roll back and recover to no matter what. And because of and we'll get into this a little bit later, but because of our unique proprietary method of replicating data, Zerto is able to provide incredibly aggressive SLAs when it comes to data loss and downtime. So always having really a point that's just seconds prior to any given time that you can roll back and recover to, so you can minimize disruption to your business. And we use that, we leverage the power of our journal-based recovery in order to deliver that continuous data protection. Now that's sort of part of the short term, but as you look at things like compliance and backups, there's a long-term retention aspect to that, and you need to be able to have applications and data for much longer than maybe a few hours or a few days or a few weeks. So Zerto is also able to deliver long-term retention for these sorts of compliance and backup initiatives. And of course, what is any replication good for without some sort of application consistency? A lot of times applications are made up of database servers, file servers, web servers, load balancers. There's a lot of moving pieces that go into these enterprise applications nowadays. So being able to replicate and recover all the constituents of an application, not just single files or single VMs, with complete consistency is key. And I am hoping that these animations will work. And the answer to that question is, it's a beautiful thing. So, Zerto has orchestration and automation built right into the product. So you don't need to manage different vendors, or you don't need to evaluate new products to handle different parts of the recovery process. So we take care of automation steps, for example, like IP reconfiguration, or switching data stores or hosts, recovery hosts that your data is going to. When you set up Zerto, you take care of a lot of that back-end effort. So when it comes time to failover, it really is as simple as a few clicks of the button. And lastly, all this is wrapped around with analytics and control. So we actually have built-in Zerto analytics to the product. It requires no configuration. It comes included with your purchase of Zerto Virtual Replication. And what this allows you to do is really see everything that's going on for your entire multi-site, multi-cloud environment. We don't care where your applications and data sit. We give you one place to view all of your applications and data. And you can also leverage intelligent reports to drill down and find out things, troubleshoot issues when it comes to, for example, network performance or storage utilization. So it's really bringing a bit more of a systematic approach into your data protection and being able to get a little more granular with what exactly is going wrong in my environment and where are some steps that I might be able to fix this. So like we've talked about, we have point-in-time recovery for seamless rollback to moments before ransomware attacks. This is done through our journal, which provides a rewind capability in about 5-second increments. And this retention, as it stands today, can go up to 30 days max. Now, if you don't want to utilize that much storage and you want maybe only a week or two worth of retention, you can configure that. So it is configurable for, at minimum, 1 hour, at maximum up to 30 days. And as we look to the future and we continue to build out our IT resilience platform, that is going to be extending all the way to 7 years. So really giving you both the short-term and the long-term retention that you need to effectively handle outages and disruptions in the short term, and maybe things more like compliance initiatives in the long term. Now, looking at sort of how traditional technologies have handled things like ransomware attacks, and really any outage, to be frank, is they're not really able to offer a lot of granularity that companies really require nowadays. So if I am only snapshotting or only backing up every few hours, or maybe even once a day at midnight, there's going to be hours, potentially days worth of data that is at stake. And should something happen, that work is lost, and that has to be recreated, and that's a drain on time and resources, and which costs your business money, not to mention the potential just brand impact from having an outage. I mean, you see it all the time in news headlines. Not all press is good press. We'll put it that way. So how Zerto really is able to handle these a bit differently is leveraging our continuous data protection mechanism. So every few seconds, Zerto is capturing the I/O that occurs on your VMs in real time, and we're post-write, so we don't interfere at all during the actual I/O stream. So we sit outside of the I/O stream. We wait until writes are acknowledged to storage prior to sending those changes across. But we're doing that every, generally we see 5 to 10 seconds. So if, let's say, for example, a ransomware incident occurs at 17:26, you're typically going to have a moment that is just a few seconds prior, and in this example we're being generous by giving you 60 seconds, but that is oftentimes going to be much more aggressive. So you can just roll back to that point in time, pick it out, and rewind and recover, so you can completely mitigate any impact to your business. And this is just giving you a screenshot from the actual UI, what the journal looks like. It can be a bit of an abstract concept, so during the recovery process, and we'll see this in a few slides here, but these are all those point in times that you can pick out and restore to. And if your eyes are better than mine, you can see that these are in fact separated by just a few seconds. And it'll tell you if, for example, one of your point in times is corrupt, and maybe you don't want to use that as an interval to recover to, so you can easily just go back a few seconds more. So we're never really, we're allowing you to have much more aggressive replication intervals, and there's never going to be a lot of data at stake with Zerto. And this just kind of gives you an idea of the breadth of which you can recover. It's not just for single VMs. It's for VMs, multi-VM applications, individual files, so you can leverage journal file level recovery and recover individual files that may have been infected by ransomware. And this goes all the way up to the site level. So should an entire site goes down, maybe someone lives in a natural disaster prone area like Florida or the Midwest, and an entire site is turned off, you have the ability to push that entire site and start to run production out of your disaster recovery site. We're very flexible with what that disaster recovery site is. It doesn't have to be a brick and mortar data center that you own and operate. It could be a space in a co-location facility. It could be a private cloud that either you manage or maybe you leverage an external partner to, you leverage their sort of disaster recovery site, maybe through a disaster recovery as a service offering. And it could be something like a public cloud. So we work with all the major players like AWS, Microsoft Azure, IBM Cloud, HPE. So we're very flexible in that regard. And all the while, we are able to do this while delivering seconds of RPO at scale. And now just to take you a bit through sort of what the recovery process actually looks like, it is incredibly simple. So what you're looking at here is the Zerto Virtual Manager. This is your sort of management UI, and recovering applications and data, and it's all the same workflow. It is as simple as 3 clicks. So something happens, right? Your applications are no longer meeting the configured service levels that you've dedicated to them. So what you can do is first click to failover. That's going to bring up this menu which shows all of your what we call virtual protection groups, and those are just groups of VMs that together comprise a single application. And it can only be one VM in a virtual protection group, or it can be multiple. And you can set things like boot order priority within those protection groups. But you're going to want to select whichever application is having issues. You're going to go into the journal and select and verify a point in time that you want to recover to. And we don't have like an auto commit policy, so as soon as you select it and fail over, that's it, and there's no going back. We do have a window of time where you're able to spin your VMs and data up at your target site, see if everything's okay. If not, you can roll back and choose another point in time to recover. And lastly, start the failover. Again, it's really, really simple because you've done the legwork ahead of time. When you set up Zerto, you've made all the specifications. All right, what network is my failover going to use? What is the new IP address that I'm going to be sending data to after it's in my DR site? What host is it going to live on? What data store? So doing all of this work ahead of time really makes the process so simple when the clock's ticking, and it really does matter. And now just to give you a customer example so you can see how customers have leveraged Zerto to protect themselves from ransomware. So this is Tenkata. They're a large textile manufacturing company down in the southeast. And prior to Zerto, they were leveraging backups. They were doing it to tape and disk, and an entire file server at one of their manufacturing facilities had gotten encrypted with ransomware. Now, they lost 12 hours worth of data. They weren't getting that back. And it took them about 2 weeks to fully recover from that incident. Fast forward a little bit to when they had installed Zerto, the same thing happened. They had a number of directories on a file server at one of their manufacturing facilities get infected again. However, this time using Zerto and our unique continuous data replication, they only lost about 10 seconds worth of data, which was essentially negligible. And they were able to fully recover their applications and data in under 10 minutes. So comparing these two figures, the data loss and time to recover, was a vast improvement over their previous solution, and they were able to achieve that because Zerto is so effective at doing what it does. And just to talk a little bit about disaster recovery as a service, part of the beauty of Zerto is it really doesn't change much fundamentally what's going on. It really just changes the target for where your data is going to. So we have an extensive network of, it used to be 350. I think it's more upwards of 450 at this point. But we leverage a bunch of Zerto cloud service providers who use Zerto as the back-end replication engine for their disaster recovery as a service offering. And this includes 90% of the participating providers in Gartner's 2018 DRaaS Magic Quadrant. So, if we look at the quadrant, which I can't remember if it was May or July of this year that it came out, but Zerto's being used in 90% of those companies that are providing DRaaS. And if you look at the Forrester Magic Wave, 10 out of 10 of those companies leverage Zerto. So between these two, we have 95% of companies that are in, the analyst cross-site, so to speak, leverage Zerto to power their disaster recovery as a service offering. It's incredibly powerful. And just to bring it all home, Zerto really provides one simple platform for all of your IT resilience needs, and it's not only about ransomware or disaster recovery. There's a wide range of use cases that Zerto can help solve so we can help move your business forward, mainly delivering continuous availability for an always-on customer experience, workload mobility to easily move applications and workloads without risk while being protected, and multi-cloud agility to move to, from, and between clouds, allowing you to control your cloud and control your costs. And I think that brings us to the end here. I just wanted to put up this slide here. So I know there were some giveaways going on in this call, but if you were unfortunate to not receive the $500 gift card or one of those iPads, you need not worry because we're doing a bit of our own giveaways. So if you reach out to Nick Repko and set up a demo after this webinar, if you're interested in looking a bit more at the technology and how Zerto can help address the pains for your business, the first people that want to see a demo with us are going to receive a $25 Amazon gift card. So with that, I hope I'm under time, David, given the few technical difficulties we had, but I'd love to answer any questions if there are some.
Yeah, great presentation, Nick. let's see. What questions do we have? Or I'm sorry, Ryan. Great presentation. Let's see. I was just looking at a question here from Nick. So the question here is, what about ransomware in the cloud? Once we back up data to the cloud, is there a way to, safeguard our data from being hit by ransomware in the cloud, or is that possible? How does that work?
Well, with Zerto, I mean, we are not going to safeguard your data in the sense that we're going to prevent ransomware from getting in. That's more cybersecurity, and Zerto's more IT resilience. But no matter if you're on premises or no matter if you're in the cloud, if you do get infected with ransomware, it's being able to mitigate more effectively the effects and the negative effects and the fallout from that attack. So rather than, if we go back and look at our Tenkata example, rather than it taking 8 hours to recover, losing 8 hours of data and taking 2 weeks to recover, that's obviously a huge impact to the business. Being able to mitigate that to seconds of data loss and minutes of recovery time is a huge impact for the business. Again, it's not going to prevent the the initial ransomware incident, but it is going to help you more effectively mitigate the lasting effects of that attack.
Okay, very nice. For the audience, I popped up a poll question. I'll just leave that up on the screen. If you'd care to take a look at that, I'd appreciate it. We'll share the results in just a moment. Ryan, let's see, another question here. They're asking about hypervisor compatibility. What does Zerto support?
So today we support VMware and Hyper-V. We are always looking at expanding the sort of the platform support of our product. So obviously there's a couple different hypervisors available in the market today, like KVM and Red Hat, and we're always looking at the market shares of those and the use cases for companies that maybe are on those. And as those grow, obviously we're going to try to make our product applicable for a wider audience of people. But as it stands today, VMware and Microsoft Hyper-V are the supported platforms, virtualization platforms.
Okay. And does Zerto protect physical machines or just virtual machines?
So that would depend on how you are consuming Zerto. We typically just protect virtual machines because we are at the all of our components really sit at the hypervisor layer, so we need to be able to see them in order to protect them. That being said, we do work with IBM Resiliency Services, and in conjunction with Zerto and IBM Resiliency Services, you are able to protect both physical and virtual machines. But so again, it depends on how you're consuming it. It is possible, but most customers that we find, want like the on-prem to on-prem or on-prem to cloud, it is just going to be virtual servers that we're protecting.
Got it. And then what's the pricing model for Zerto?
So we are priced on a per protected virtual machine basis. We don't care, the transaction rate of those VMs. We don't care how many, sockets on that VM. We don't care how much data you need to replicate. It is just that you want to protect a virtual machine and you get a license for that VM, and it's not hard-coded in or anything like that. So as things change, maybe you don't need that VM protected in the future, but you need it protected now. You are able to switch up those licenses and protect the VMs that matter most to your business.
Okay. And then is there a trial or evaluation of Zerto? How does that work?
Absolutely, yes. So we do I think it's 2-week, it could be 30 days free trial. And if you're interested in seeing that, I suggest that you, I can't put it up on the screen now, but if you reach out to Nicholas, NICHOLAS.repko, REPKO @zerto.com, and you're interested in seeing a demo, we will make sure that you get set up, and you'll even earn a $25 Amazon gift card to use for the holidays.
Awesome. I put that email address back up on the screen there, so anyone out there who wants to do that can reach out directly to you or to Nick. I think that's all the questions we have here on our live time slot, but there's a number of more technical questions for you to check out there, Ryan. Thank you so much for being on the event today.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll comb through the other questions in the chat. If I'll answer what I can, and if I don't have answers, I'll make sure to reach out to people via email.
Excellent. For more information, visit Zerto.com. Also check out the handout that's available for download right there in your audience console. And with that, let me go ahead and share the results of this poll question with you. The question was, how long would it take you to restore a key business application if it crashed? 4% said less than 15 minutes. 13% said not sure. 3% more than 48 hours. 11%, 24 to 48. But the big winner here was 1 to 5 hours at 30%. So very interesting, and might be interesting for you to see how you stack up with other companies on the event today. Hope that's some good info. We'll do some more polls here in just a little bit. And until then, we need to announce our next prize winner. So the next Amazon $500 gift card is going out to Stephen Lussier, L-U-I-S-S-E-R, from Pennsylvania. And the next grand prize, another Apple iPad Pro, is going out to Truyen, T-U-Y-E-N, Tran, T-R-A-N, from California. Congratulations to both of you. We'll announce the prizes out on Twitter and also here in the Q&A. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Teresa Miller, Principal Technologist at Cohesity. Take it away, Teresa.
Welcome, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about data protection and disaster recovery with Cohesity. My name is Teresa Miller. I'm a Principal Technologist that's part of the Technology Advocacy Group. A little bit about Cohesity before we get started today. The company was founded back in 2013 by Mohit Aaron, and the mission, his goal, was to redefine secondary storage. Now, also an interesting fact about Mohit is that he was one of the co-founders of Nutanix, and he also was a lead on the Google file system. Also, to date, we have a software-defined platform, hundreds of customers, of which 70% are enterprise, and we continue to grow exponentially year over year. Over on the right, there are probably some organizations you recognize, but these are some of our customers. So let's get started talking about the overall system. Let's dive in more specifically to SpanFS. This is our web-scale distributed file system, and it's designed for all types of secondary workloads, of which many of those features are listed here. I'm going to specifically call out just a couple of these. One is the global indexing and search. So no matter how many nodes of Cohesity you have in your environment, it will scale and index the entire environment, which is a huge advantage that leads to benefits such as the ability to recover multiple systems, no matter which node they're on. And it also lends into some of the other features we'll talk about as we move forward related to mass storage fragmentation. The other one I want to call out is multi-protocol. We work with NFS, SMB, and S3. Another important element of SpanFS is how we manage file and object consolidation. Organizations such as yours have all of these media types. We all have home directories, media content, application files, file shares, unstructured data, and objects of all kinds. And the file and object consolidation that we embark on allows for deduplication in a way that eliminates the backup of all of those different types of file copies. Over on the right, we also, with our file and object consolidation, have the ability to take advantage of these items, things such as multi-protocol access, quality of service of the network. We talked a little bit about deduplication. We also do compression of that data. We have a Google-like search platform. We have the ability to allow you to do limitless snaps and clones. We do write only, read many, and we have encryption. All of the things that are necessary to successfully back up, recover, and manage your data. Now let's talk about how our file system supports the modern and efficient backup solution. From an architecture perspective, let's take a look. On the left, we have a Cohesity data platform that is backing up all of our physical servers, virtual servers, and our hypervisor, our databases, and our storage, all done fast and efficient. Over on the right, we have the ability to archive and replicate any of our data to the cloud. We go up to the cloud in AWS, Azure, or Google, and we are S3 and NFS cloud compatible. If your organization has a use case for long-term retention that does not include the cloud or a colo, we can take that data to tape. Finally, at the bottom, we also have the ability to replicate to a Cohesity data platform that's in a colo. This can be physical or our virtual edition and is extremely valuable for that disaster recovery solution. Putting all of these pieces together, not only do you get backup and recovery, this feeds into a disaster recovery solution, whether it's in the cloud or a colo. You now have the ease and ability to deploy it. One thing I want to add from some of the enterprises that I've worked in, I have always seen enterprises have a hard time making a disaster recovery project move forward. And a lot of the time that was cost driven, but also it was resource and dedication driven, not having the staff to support it. With a solution like this, being able to deploy a simple Cohesity data platform, it now no longer justifies all the excuses that I've heard organizations have to deal with when deciding to move forward with disaster recovery or not. It is now possible. Another important element to Snaptree is the whole instant mass restore functionality. So not only can we restore a single server quickly, we can actually do, let's say, 10 servers at any given time, or 20, whatever you need to do. And I can tell you, I've been in situations where this was necessary. Many years ago at this point, but this is completely a true story. On call, I get the 12:30 a.m. This system's down, and I just got a note that this other one is down. Both systems that I was supporting, and said, all right, I'll log in and I'll take a look. And I log in and I see Windows 7 deploying to my servers. Now, that means that someone was doing some form of automation to deploy the Windows OS desktop level out to the environment, and in the end, accidentally selected a batch of servers. When all was said and done, there were actually hundreds of servers in the environment that had been destroyed. Thankfully, the job was able to be stopped quickly because in this environment, there were nearly 1,000 servers. So it really was a fraction, but it did hit some critical systems. So when you're in a situation like that, you want mass recovery and restore, and you want it done efficiently and fast. So let's just take a quick look at the workflow here. And I want to just show you how it can do that for you. So first of all, you end up with a backup. And as part of that backup, you end up with a clone. Once you have that full backup, going forward, there will be incrementals. But that incremental will be then put into the backup clone, and that then becomes the new full backup. So already in this case, backup 0 could go away, and I still have the ability to recover the full server if something were to happen. So it's pretty convenient and slick. And here we're just seeing it happen again, where the incremental just gets fed in to the clone and it becomes the real backup. You have complete control over what you keep and don't keep. So as I mentioned, backup 0 could go away, backup 1 could go away. You would still have backup 2 with your incremental backups fully hydrated and ready to go for whatever recovery process you need. We also offer built-in protection for ransomware. I have another really great story to go with this one. So actually I have two great stories. The first one is that I have a server that runs a virtual app that appears to be compromised by some form of ransomware. And this happened because some level of internet access is allowed to the users in their virtual application sessions. We had to act quickly. The first thing we did was remove the network, basically unplug it from the network through the virtual console. So that prevented it from spreading anywhere else. From there, we made sure that the redundant virtual application system was online so that users could continue to function. But now we're stuck with an infected server. And we need to get that recovered quickly so that we can then reinstate application server redundancy for the virtual app that is functioning. And so with the right level of snapshots and backup protection in place, this was able to be restored in minutes and get that application redundancy back up and running in no time. The other piece of the Cohesity product that is valuable when it comes to ransomware is that snapshots are taken after every backup. Now, one simple fact about ransomware is that it likes to attack backups and it can destroy backups so that environments don't have the ability to recover. And so what's important to also note about our snapshots is they are immutable read-only copies. So if ransomware were to get in your environment, it cannot destroy the backups that we have in place because they are read-only. So two huge wins for whatever scenario you become faced with when it comes to ransomware. Now what we have here is a side-by-side comparison of legacy backup versus modern backup features as it relates to backup and recovery. A few points to keep in mind with your legacy backup solution that you have in place today is that the product runs in silos. If you look at the image above the words legacy backup solution, those three nodes are probably by different companies and they have no ability to talk to each other. So you're working in a silo where you're unable to get the right support potentially, or you need two support people from two different companies to work together. And then that causes issues with your ability to support your solution. That then leads to complex management. If you have multiple systems that don't talk to each other, well, now you have to log into each one, for example, take a look at different event logs, take a look at different backup jobs, etc. In terms of deduplication, each of those three nodes above the legacy backup solution, again, probably don't talk to each other. So if there are files or backups sitting on node 1, node 2 doesn't know about them. So you don't get true and holistic deduplication. Oftentimes, recoveries are slow. You have slow RPOs and RTOs. Recovery time, hour, 2 hours, days. I've seen it all in my time in the enterprise. It can really, really vary. Again, because the nodes are from different hardware vendors, likely you'll have disruptive upgrades and expansion. And these are older systems that were originally coded before there was cloud, so there's limited cloud integration. Over on the right, we have the Cohesity data platform. This is our modern backup solution. So the nodes are all converged and they can scale out, meaning that there's one way of simple management, single pane of glass. Each of the nodes know about each other and communicate with each other and know which files and backups they each have. So you get global deduplication. Recovery from an RPO and RTO perspective can be less than 5 minutes and potentially instantaneous. Because the nodes are aware of each other, it allows for non-disruptive upgrades and expansion. And because it's modern, built in the cloud era, it has native cloud integration. So a lot of huge advantages on the Cohesity side for you to enjoy in the enterprise. As we start looking to wrap things up today, I also want to let you know that we do offer an add-on service for your Cohesity data platform. It is a SaaS solution, and it brings together all of the features that you see here, not just backup and recovery, into a single pane of glass for management, and really helps you better achieve your business requirements when it comes to secondary data. If you're interested in learning more about Cohesity, I've included some links here that will provide you some more detailed information about our products. But just to summarize what we do, we simplify data protection, and that's our leading use case. We reduce your data protection costs by more than 50%. We make data productive so that you can search through the data and perform even in-place analytics. And you can use the data to provision instant test and dev copies, even for your developers. What we're really about is hyperconverged secondary storage. It's not just a backup. We believe that your infrastructure should be much more than just an insurance policy and should make your data productive. That concludes my presentation, and thank you so much for your time today.
Great presentation, Teresa. We do have some questions here for you from the audience. Are you ready?
How are you?
I'm great. Yeah, thanks for being on. Great presentation. We do have some questions here for you from the audience if you're ready. You ready?
Yeah, let's take them.
All right. Let's see here. Robert is asking, when it comes to encryption, what kind of algorithms and encryption options does Cohesity offer?
Oh, that's a really great question. So we really we're PKI 256 proprietary, and we follow all the industry standards. So it's really important, obviously, for us and for our customers to stay on top of that. So we make sure we've got the latest and greatest in place.
Okay. Cool. So let's see, another question. Frank here, he's asking, in a cloud deployment, where is the monitoring information displayed? How does that work?
Yeah, so any monitoring information that we have would be within Cohesity. So, from like a cloud perspective, like the Helios slide that I had up today, anything from that perspective as well, from a monitoring perspective, would be within Helios. So we don't push anything into the cloud consoles or into like your hypervisor console for VMware. It's all in Cohesity.
Got it. So Helios is kind of like the centralized management platform for the Cohesity clusters?
Well, it's our add-on solution. If you want all of the various features that we had called out, yes, so then it does act as our monitoring and analytics for that. Yep.
Got it. Okay. Let's see. Kenneth, he's asking, what version of Cohesity cluster do I need to run in order to use Helios?
Yeah, so Helios requires the 6.0.1 version. So I think, if you're looking at it from a new product perspective, of course, everything we are doing today on a new deployment would be supported. And if you already have it, then you just need to be at 6.0.1.
Okay. And then what about, everybody's concerned about privacy these days. When you're using Helios, does actual customer data get sent to the Helios cloud or solution, or is metadata just stored up there?
Yeah, so from a Helios perspective, it's strictly metadata. We would not have insights into any customer data. So security, customer security and privacy definitely is on the top of our list in ensuring that.
Okay. And what about, how do people typically get started with Cohesity? Is there evaluation or a proof of concept? What do you recommend?
Yeah, we do offer a proof of concept. And so if anyone is interested, we could definitely channel those inquiries through me, and then I can make sure, depending on the region that they're in, that we get the right person engaged so that they can give it a try. What we do find is most of our customers do start with the backup solution, but that does not mean, if archiving, for example, is where you need the most assistance, we can definitely take a look and start there as well with you.
Okay. And I think that's an interesting point. A lot of people think of Cohesity as just, perhaps it's just data protection, but what you're saying is Cohesity is much more than that. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other things I touched on it during the presentation, but I'll reiterate a little bit more too, is the whole data mass fragmentation issue as well. We take a look at your files, your backups, and when it comes to knowing what you have and inventorying all the copies of data that your enterprise has, I think you'd be pretty surprised what's out there. I think the most recent study showed that most companies have 6 to 10 copies of each piece of data they own. And so having some insights and knowledge into that, I think, go a long way for, cleanup processes and storage planning long term.
Okay. Yeah, you make a great point. So I get the idea kind of as a potential customer that Cohesity is not just data protection, it does archiving, it does secondary storage. I know you all have used a lot in the past in presentations, kind of the iceberg diagram, that, your primary storage is at the top of the iceberg and the secondary storage is really everything else that's not primary. And in many cases, there's a lot more there than we think there is, just like the iceberg. Is that right?
Yeah, it really is. When you think about the amount of data that really is relevant and primary to the consumer, it doesn't take long for that primary data to really become secondary data. In terms of the tiering, most of our data is secondary. So it is an interesting perspective on it.
Okay, cool. Well, there's a few more technical questions there for you that you might want to answer, but I think that's all the time we have for the live Q&A. Great presentation. Thanks for being on the event today, Teresa.
Thanks for having me.
For more information on Cohesity, visit their website, cohesity.com. Also, check out the resources available for download right there in your Handouts tab on your audience console. You can download that PDF directly from Cohesity. That's called, it has a bunch of resources, a bunch of links on where to learn more about the Cohesity solution. All right, so let me pop up our next poll question here. That is, which statement best characterizes your current DR solution? And this is a multi-select question. So you can, I encourage you to select multiple answers here if those multiple answers apply to you. And I'll just leave that up while I announce our next set of prize winners. So next prize winners are Brian Go-Renault from Connecticut, Brian Go-Renault, and Chris Cunningham from North Carolina. And to clarify, so Brian, you won an Amazon $500 gift card. Congratulations. Brian Go-Renault won an Amazon $500 gift card, and Chris Cunningham won the next iPad Pro. So congratulations to both of you. We've got 2 more Amazon $500 gift cards and 2 more iPad Pros, so make sure you stay tuned for those. All right, looks like most of you have answered the poll question. Let me share the results with you. Looks like 24% said they back up to a local appliance and then replicate to an off-site appliance. Interesting to know. And the second option there, or the second most selected answer, 11% was we back up to tape, and then tape is stored off-site. So good information to know. Thank you for answering that poll question. We've got some more polls coming up. But now it's my pleasure to introduce Stacy Budd, who is a principal consultant at Arcserve. Stacy, are you with us?
I am. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon. Thanks for being on, Stacy. Take it away.
All right. Just want to take a minute and thank everybody for their time today. I know how valuable everybody's time is. And what I'm going to do is we're going to go through a few slides, and then we're going to talk, and we'll actually see the solution as well. We're going to start out with, if you're not familiar with who Arcserve is as a company, right? Arcserve has been in the data protection industry most likely longer than just about anybody out there for SMB, right? Our first solution was founded in '88, right? And the company was founded in '83, right? So we have a long history in this space, right, as far as that goes. We have customers all across the globe, right? And you know, speaking to today's subjects, speaking to ransomware and data corruption, right? You've heard this from our previous guests, right? This should not be a surprise to anybody. You know, costs are rising, right? Productivity is an issue, right? When systems are down. Damage control, right? And unfortunately, when you have the impact of reputations and things like that, and have to let people know that you were hacked and things like that, right? So all of these are concerns. I don't think they're going to be a surprise to anybody out there, right? When we look at data security, right? Data security from a standpoint of, you know, who owns that data security, who owns the being able to restore that data and be able to do that as well, right? Who owns that responsibility? When we look at ransomware in terms of SLA, right, service level agreements, right, and being able to how we protect against that, right? What is our backup as far as that goes? There's 2 key things that we always think of, and the first is your recovery point objective. How far can you afford to recover back from? Not all data out there is equal, right? Some data needs to recover from minutes. Some data can recover from, you know, from a previous day or hours ago. So you need to determine what that recovery point objective is. The next most important, probably maybe even the most important, is how long can it take to recover that data? How long can your business afford to be down? Can it be down just a few minutes? Or, you know, do you need to have those systems back up, you know, as I said, a few minutes, or can it wait, you know, for hours for those systems to come back up? And that'll all come back to again, the value of that data and understanding the data value itself. A lot of solutions out there are going to have a very zero tolerance for downtime, right? When we think of e-commerce, when we think of, you know, sites out there that are commerce sites, you know, that people are buying product on, think of Walmart, think of Amazon, think of Target, whatever it might be, right? If you go and hit that website and the product that you're looking to purchase, you know, the website's down, you're going to go to a different website. Right, you're going to go somewhere else to purchase that product from in today's society. Right, we're really a now society, if you will. It's not just e-commerce, right? We think about things like email. We think about things like CRMs, logistics. Right, we definitely have to think about what the impact is when systems are down and what our downtime is going to be for these for these critical applications. When you think of disaster recovery as a service and how you can use disaster recovery as a service to help you with this, right? What can we do first off to close this RTO and RPO gap, right? First things, what are our employee and customer expectations, right? Do they align with our IT service delivery, right? So it's important to understand from a business owner perspective, right? Who within the business owns that particular data, right? What is their expectations, and then what you can deliver on, and make sure you have a product that maps to that, right? The challenges are often, you know, what people desire for their downtime, right? Versus what the reality is. Those two things may not map up. Right, so we need to make sure that we educate and we put the right products in place, right, to make sure that we can meet those two and we can align those two numbers as best as possible. Right, we spoke before about, you know, being able to recover from, you know, hours ago or minutes ago versus, you know, days ago. All right, as far as RPO and RTO are concerned. So when you look at, you know, the standards that are out there, right? People want narrow zero-time data loss, right? They want to be able to avoid disasters from human error, system failures, right? They want to be able we need to be able to access mission-critical apps and data in a fraction of the time that's required by competitive solutions that are out there, right? We run into this all the time, right? Our technology is cost-effectively reduces the cost of your RTOs and RPOs from hours to minutes, right, to near zero downtime, right? We need to be able to do more than just keep the lights on, right? We need to relocate your time from managing your backups to focusing on projects and innovation, right? So, you know, how we're going to do that is we're going to set up in a few clicks, and I'm going to show you this, right? A web-based console, centralized control, automated workflows. You're going to be able to just fell over in a few clicks and be able to continue running. Other challenges out there are eliminating distance, right, as a limitation, right? 70% of data lives outside of the corporate data centers, right? Fully protect data across any location, anywhere, right? And the way that we're going to help you with that is with industry-leading backup speeds, transfer large data sets, right, and safely on-site and off-site. Right. When we think of Arcserve Unified Data Protection or UDP, right? There's really two sides to UDP. There is the Unified Data Protection, which goes to hybrid cloud, which I'm going to show you today. And then there's also Arcserve UDP Cloud Direct. Arcserve UDP Cloud Direct is a solution that requires no on-site hardware. Right? We're going to back up directly to the Arcserve cloud. Right? We're going to support Windows. We're going to support Linux. We're going to support Mac. We're going to support workstations, depending on what your needs are there. Right? We're going to be able to take that data and we're going to back it up to our data centers. Right? We'll talk about those data centers in a moment, but we'll be able to back up to our data centers here in the U.S. You're looking at California or New Jersey. Right? On top of that, you'll be able to designate your Windows servers, right, for disaster recovery as a service, and you'll be able to back that data up as frequently as every 15 minutes. Okay. Then you'll be able to designate a failover and bring those servers up if you need to, or if you need to test, as we'd like everybody to test their disaster recovery as well, right? You'll be able to spin up those servers, have your users be able to access that data, and then once you're ready to fail back, replicate those changes back down. Okay? When we talk about the Arcserve Cloud Hybrid, which I'm going to demonstrate in here, that is an on-prem first solution. Right? We have a lot of customers that they need to be able to take large amounts of data. They wanted their first level of restore. They want to be on-site or on-premise, and even maybe disaster recovery on-premise first. Then we can also take and replicate that data to the Arcserve Cloud, and you could perform disaster recovery not only on-prem using our software, your hardware, or our appliances, right? Or you can, in the cloud, you can recover those servers in the cloud, spin them up using disaster recovery in our cloud as well. And so not only on-prem, but also in cloud disaster recovery, what makes most sense for you. Okay. So we're going to take a minute. I'm going to share my screen here. And we're going to take a look at the UDP solution. Right? I'm not going to show you the entire solution. What I do want to show you quickly is this is the on-prem solution. And what we have here is I'm already backing up a number of servers. And I just wanted to show you first off how easy it is to set up this configuration. Right? So we're going to go into our backup plan. And with this particular backup, I have a backup task. I'm replicating that backup to another server. This server could be in our cloud. And then I'm performing virtual standby. And virtual standby is that capability where we're taking those backups, we're converting them into virtual machines ready to turn on at a moment's notice. Right? So that's the task that we're going to focus on today. When we look at virtual standby, first off, our source is where am I performing that virtual standby at? If I've replicated it to another location, then it could be the replication location. Or if I'm not replicating it, then it could just be local. Then we're going to specify the virtualization type. This is the hypervisor that we're going to utilize. So we support VMware and Hyper-V as targets. The source systems could be virtual, they could be physical, it wouldn't matter. Right? And then we can also target EC2 and Azure for locations as well. So not only do we support sending this and replicating it to our cloud, but you could also use public cloud as virtual standby locations as well. So we're going to then put in, of course, our credentials to connect to that cloud, and we're going to connect to it. Then we're going to take and we're going to define the resources that we want to assign to that system, how many processors, how much memory, right, and network settings, all of those as well. We'll also give the system a prefix, and if I go into my Hyper-V, here I can see that that machine is actually created. right? So we give it a prefix within, in this case, Hyper-V, so we can identify it. If I go back into my console, once I've made those settings, and I need to spin up this server, it's as easy as going in, right-clicking on a machine, and choosing what I wanted to do. Right? So if I wanted to just restore data, I could choose the restore option, files, folders, entire systems, bare metal restore, all that's going to be there for me. Right? VMs back into virtual environments, all those are going to be options for you. Right? As far as virtual standby goes, I can just choose the option to stand by the VM. It's going to give me an option of my snapshots, which one do I want to spin up. Now for my backup frequency, I could have chose 15 minutes. I could have chose every so many hours. I could have chose daily, weekly, monthly, or a combination of those. Right? And then I would get those options here of which ones I want to spin up. So all I need to do is select power on the VM. We'll get a confirmation. And in a matter of minutes, this virtual machine will spin up. When we take a look outside of this, right, it's great. Let's get a system up and running, and that's fantastic. But how are my users going to connect to it? So we're going to work with you ahead of time so that we can determine and help you configure a VPN so you can connect into these systems, right, if it's in our cloud. Right? If it's up in Amazon, you're going to work with Amazon, make sure that you have a way to VPN into those systems and have routing and everything and connect into those systems up once they're in Amazon or Azure. Shouldn't have said just Amazon, but Amazon or Azure, or even if it's at another location that you have, right? One thing here is we're going to give you options and be flexible to work with what your requirements are, whether it's public cloud, private cloud, whatever it might be. Right. I didn't spin up that server. I know we're kind of limited on time here, so I just wanted to make sure we show you what that process is. You know, we can definitely take and give you a full depth demo if you're interested in it. You know, just make sure you reach out to us. You know, I'm sure we'll be reaching out to you, and we can show you a demo of the entire product and all those capabilities as well. Not only, and I did want to take one additional moment here, not only can we utilize that virtual standby, which is, you know, we're creating those virtual systems ahead of time, but we could also use emulation, right? So perhaps within my configuration, I told it only keep 3 snapshots, right? But I needed to spin up a system from 4 snapshots ago, 4 backups ago, right, or 5. Well, Instant VM gives you the ability to take and pretty much go through the same steps that you go through within the configuration of the backup, right? But more in a reactive approach. So you can choose any of your backups that are sitting there on disk. Choose your hypervisor, and then go through this and be able to spin that system up. We'll emulate that backup is a virtual machine. Okay, so what you'll see here is we'll define a proxy. Somewhere we will actually spin up those systems or present that out. It could be your backup server. It could be any other server on the network. Okay, so this is another capability, and a lot of times people use this for testing. When it comes to ransomware, the main advantage here is, hey, I'm going to be able to take advantage of this, you know, to come from an earlier backup than I have dedicated with virtual standby. So we give you both capabilities, both options there. So I hope that kind of helped everybody with understand what we offer from that perspective. You know, just in closing, we have a few slides here, you know, and I hope, I mean, these are things that everybody values and understands the value of this #1 user education. When it comes to ransomware, that's the best thing that you can do, right? Educate your users. We've had, other speakers on here today probably speaking to that as well. Definitely going to be important. Educate your users. Secondly, have consistent backups. If you do not have consistent backups, unfortunately, I'd like to say that you'll never get hit by ransomware, but we don't want to live in that world, right? So if you don't want to have to pay ransoms and hope that it might work, right? I think everybody out there should value, being able to restore from backups. Know that you can trust that data as well. Test it, validate it, those kind of things. Okay. Also, everybody should be following that 3-2-1 backup strategy, right? You should have multiple, copies of your data. At least one copy of that data should be offline. That should be tape or in cloud, or it should be somewhere else. Okay. And then always, you shouldn't feel trapped into a solution. You should always be evaluating your solutions. Like new technologies come out, new advancements come out, new applications are released, things like that as well. So you need to make sure that solution is evolving with you as well and offering the latest capabilities. Protect the protector, right? Protect your backup data. Okay? Replicate that data to an offsite location or up to cloud. Right? Keep an eye on those network shares, right? Network shares are the bane of most administrators. That's where your ransomware is going to propagate to, right? So obviously keep an eye on that as well, right? If you're sharing out your backup location, it can get encrypted as well. So make sure use that rule of, hey, least amount of people being able to access the data as possible or the location as possible. Okay. And then periodically copy what we call recovery points or backups to offline media. Right? We can support USB disk, tape, cloud. We can support all different types of destinations as far as that goes as well. So, in final thoughts, right? A comprehensive backup solution, right? It's fundamentally the best way to get back on your feet, right? If you do get infected, you need to be able to restore, right? You need to be able to get that data back quickly, right? Make sure you can leverage disaster recovery as a service so that while you're doing those restores, you can have your systems up and running and people can be accessing that data. And then easily restore from those disaster recovery as a service systems. Right. We hit on this before. You need to educate your end users, right? Only user education can mitigate the risk of an attack. We tell people all the time, don't click on links, don't do this. We need to make sure that they understand the value and the importance of that. Practice the principle of least privilege, right? Configure all accounts with only the access privileges required for their job roles, right? And I think this is one of the important ones, most important ones, document comprehensive security solutions and internal policies, right? Have a very well documented plan in place. And when you test these disaster recovery plans, make sure that you test them in a way where not everybody is there, right? So during your disaster recovery testing, bring in everybody into a room and say 3 of you are on vacation today, so everybody else has got to figure out how to do your role. Right? I think that's very important. And that comes back to how easy the solution is going to be for not only you to use, but for other people to use as well. And not only the ease of use of the product, but how well it's documented too. All right, so with that, we're going to go ahead and just answer a few questions here. I hope I educated everybody a little bit on at least what Arcserve has to offer.
Yeah, great presentation, Stacy. Always love the live demo. Very good to see the product in action. So let's see, first question that came in here, they're asking about the Arcserve Cloud. How long does it take to spin up a server in the cloud using Arcserve?
Fantastic question, and one of the reasons I didn't show it on there, it really depends on the role of that server, right? But usually it's going to be minutes, right? If it's a database server, it may take a few minutes more to start up those services as far as that goes, but not only being able to spin up that server, but then also be able to access that data. Our goal is for users to be able to access those servers in somewhere between the 5-minute to 15-minute range. And we really shoot for more of that 5-minute range, but it comes down to what kind of resources do I give that system and what role does that server have.
Okay.
Great question.
Yeah. So a few minutes to get it up and running, and then once it's up and running, how would the end users access that server?
Sure. Fantastic question. So they're going to access through a VPN connection. It's usually either going to be a site-to-site VPN connection or a point-to-site VPN connection to be able to connect to it. So you may have if you do a point-to-site, you would have your users connecting to it. If you do site-to-site, you would just have it being extended now on your network.
Very nice. And then to clarify, is Arcserve hardware or software? Like, is there a hardware appliance that you install, or do they just install software?
Sure. So we offer both hardware and software, depending on what makes most sense. A lot of customers, they really like the appliance approach where they can take in everything is from one vendor, right, and then they can replicate to there. We also offer an appliance in that case, but we also offer software so that customers can take and use their own existing hardware to do that too. And when you look at the Cloud Direct solution, right, there is no on-premise hardware required at all. It backs up directly to our cloud. There's no on-premise. Although you can keep a latest copy of your backup on-premise, really the strength of that product is that it's a direct-to-cloud solution.
Okay. And then a question here from Dave. He's asking, does assured recovery work on both the appliance and the cloud? And can you do testing daily or weekly?
Fantastic question. Assured recovery is that capability where you can take and test your backups through automated DR testing. That testing can be done, daily, weekly, monthly, or on a schedule. Right, so you can say, I want to test my monthly backups, I want to test my weekly backups. Or you can say, you know what, every Saturday, just test the latest backup that's been done. Right, so that might come back to a daily, or it may even come back if you're backing up throughout the day. It may be one of those that you're testing. That assured recovery process could be done on-site. It could be also performed in the cloud as well.
Okay. And what's the first step that people typically take to get started with Arcserve? Is there a trial, or do they work through their VAR? How does that work?
So there is a trial download on our site where you can download all of our products. That will have us give you a call to see if we can help with configuration, answer any questions, and do anything like that as well. Also, sometimes we have people just reach out to our sales team, and we can, of course, perform more in-depth demos like than what I showed today, but showing more features, functions, those kind of things, but really drill down to what their needs are going to be.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I like this comment for you, Stacy, from Harry. He said, I skipped lunch for this presentation. It was so worth it. So great presentation. Thanks for being on the event today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
For more information on Arcserve, of course, visit arcserve.com, sign up, download the free trial, and try it out for yourself. If you haven't answered the poll question on the screen, now is the time to do it. And I'll just leave it up there while I announce our next prize winners. We have an Amazon $500 gift card going out to Joseph Manalasan. Jonas Manalasan from Virginia. Congratulations to Jonas from Virginia. And then we have an iPad Pro going to Carl Aiken from Oklahoma. Congratulations, Jonas and Carl. one more iPad and another $500 gift card to give away, so make sure you stay tuned for those prize drawings. Let me share the results of this poll with you. And it looks like 60% or so, good percentage of you have plans to update your DR and data protection solution in the near future, which is great because that corresponds back to the poll where the audience responded that roughly 60% of you aren't quite sure about your DR and data protection solution and feel like you need something updated or a new solution in place. So thank you for answering that poll question. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. William Bell. He is the Executive Vice President of Products at PhoenixNAP. William, are you with us?
I am. Thank you very much for having me today.
Thanks for being on. Take it away.
Right. I will jump right in. All right, guys. I'm going to head towards, I think, the rounding out the final presentation here of this Megacast. And we're going to talk a little bit today about how we approach infrastructure security from a disaster recovery as a service perspective. And it's something that not a lot of people think about when they're looking at DR as a service. People are looking at, okay, what are my RTOs, what are my RPOs, and how much does it cost? But a lot of times they're not considering what is the security stance of the provider that I'm going to recover into, right? And how are they going to help me from an infrastructure security perspective? What is my compliance going to look like, as I kind of move in that environment? So we're going to talk a little bit about all those facets today. For those of you that aren't familiar with PhoenixNAP, we've been around since 2009, and we've slowly been building one of the broadest infrastructure as a service platforms in the world. And today we're operating in 10 world-class facilities, with our flagship facilities being Phoenix, Ashburn, and Amsterdam. And we're providing a large, diverse array of services with a specific focus in disaster recovery and offsite backup. So it's definitely something that's near and dear to our heart, and we're going to try to walk you guys through some of that today. So when we look at the problem that most customers face when they're looking at disaster recovery and business continuity in general is they know they need it. They know they need some level of BCP program and some level of disaster recovery plan, but they're not really looking at it holistically. They're just saying, I got to get my data somewhere else in case something bad happens. They're not planning and budgeting for the problem. And traditionally, the reason is because it's really expensive. Before this concept of disaster recovery as a service, where you could replicate data from diverse infrastructure to some type of centralized multi-tenant infrastructure, setting up a disaster recovery site, even if it's kind of standby, was very expensive. And you just never used it. So you're paying for all this equipment, and it was just never, a great business. It was important. It was necessary, and a lot of businesses did it, but it wasn't something that they enjoyed doing, and it was kind of a waste of money in the traditional sense. So when we started approaching this problem, we were talking about, what are the options that exist today. Most of the options that existed when we launched our service portfolio were very infrastructure as a service, right? Like, here's my storage target, replicate to me, and I'll spin up your VM, right? And that's truly all the consideration that was applied to performing this service on behalf of customers. And they weren't looking at the business and the specifically the compliance and security stance of that business once it's live in production and running in the disaster recovery target. And so we said, okay, we're trying to change some of this paradigm. And we can't lose sight of the cost mechanics and the importance of disaster recovery as a service from a saving money perspective and OpEx expense perspective. But we do have to find a way to make this an environment like this more compatible for critical workloads that exist out there. And so we are trying to help customers make this decision, right? do I want to keep doing this myself, or do I want to find a partner that can help me look at this problem holistically? And so when we look at this landscape and why, right, we have to reiterate what I'm sure a lot of my predecessors on this call have talked about, which is, security is vital to an organization. And security of the data is important wherever the data resides and where the data lives and breathes potentially once you've failed over, right? Production environment. And for all of the reasons that are listed here and many, many others, it's important to address these problems. And so, if you're looking at true disaster recovery as a service, you're looking at offsite backup, there's a lot of reasons to leverage a service like this. But the most important reason truly is to save the business from, the abhorrent expenses that exist with breach notification and customer attrition, but also to save the reputation of the company that you work for. And I think that those two things have to be kind of looked at hand in hand. And so we wanted to try to change that paradigm. And we run into all kinds of different concerns. As we talk to different customers out there and we look at this environment, customers ask us all kinds of questions about, how do you handle multi-tenancy? What type of resources am I given, right? How are you handling encryption? What does your uptime, documented uptime and availability look like? And the last thing, what does compliance and security look like for me in a multi-tenant disaster recovery as a service platform, right? How can you make sure that I'm going to meet all of the requirements that I've worked so dang hard on-prem to get under control in a cloud service? And so we've tried to meet this head on with what we consider to be a new level of secure cloud infrastructure. And so we're looking at all facets of the data that resides not only at rest in a disaster recovery target environment or alive in a production environment / failover of a production environment. And we're trying to ensure that we get a holistic approach to security of that data, right? And we're looking at the operating system, we're looking at the network, leveraging, next generation microsegmentation with NSX. We're ensuring that all customers have backups of their data, right? And we're looking at the infrastructure from a holistic threat management perspective, and we have a 24/7 SOC sitting there doing analysis on the environment, looking for attacks against the environment for the customers that have failed over, for the customers that chose to remain live in the environment. I think that that's something that's super important to consider, and really being transparent about the reference architecture that exists there. And we worked really closely with Veeam, VMware, Intel to really help make this a reality, to give the customer a great cloud experience, a self-service environment, an ability to point and click and create new workloads if necessary, post-failover or in a wholly production environment, and really ensure that our DR targets for customers match the same level of security that we would provide to a hosted cloud customer that chose to run that environment full-time specifically in case a customer decides that a replication failover is a one-way trip for them, right? And it happens more often than you think, right? Where, a data center that a customer might be in completely burns to the ground, right? If in the terms of an office data center as an example. And sometimes DR is a one-way trip, and you have to be ready to run that environment there, protect that environment like it is running production all the time. And that's one of the biggest limitations that I see with a lot of the DR as a service platforms out there. They're not designed for that. In fact, in all kinds of ways, they restrict the size of virtual machines that you can run. They restrict the amount of networks you can have, the amount of bandwidth you can have, because they're not planning for you to stay there. And that is a big problem and a big trap that I think a lot of people have to consider. So this kind of dives in a little bit more, and I think we provided the slides here, so you guys can download those, and if not, you can reach out to us directly and we'll get them to you. But this kind of goes into a little bit more detail of all the different things that we're doing, leveraging next generation infrastructure technologies, but also, you know, the feet on the street teams looking at the environment, helping provide security, encryption, patch management, etc., for the infrastructure that exists in the target. And so that's, you know, from a disaster recovery as a service perspective, from a production environment perspective, that is, you know, the whole, you know, kind of breadth of the service that we're providing today. But when people look at cloud services, a lot of times they're missing the boat from a SaaS perspective, right? And so we've started to try to address that. And I think you know, another event, we kind of announced this managed backup for Office 365 product line that we just launched, and our partners, our customers are super excited about it once they understand why it's necessary. And I think that's the biggest killer in all this. A lot of people look at Office 365, Salesforce, you know, all these different Gmail. They look at all these different SaaS platforms, and they just assume that the data is being backed up for them and that they have perfect retention and everything's safe and secure. The reality is a little bit more complex, and we're going to dive into why Office 365 in this call, but the reality is slightly more complex than that, right? We're faced with a situation where there are massive gaps in the control of the data that exists in these SaaS platforms. It's truly your data, you own it, and they're not responsible for its protection, right? Especially against things like accidental deletion or, you know, insider threats and things like that. So definitely take a look at that if you're a big Office 365 user. And when we look at DR, we're really talking about our global infrastructure platform, right? So all of the services that we offer as a business, they roll up into our backup services, our DR services, because they're not really a specific infrastructure product. It's more of a solution that we're delivering, and they can take advantage of any of this broad infrastructure platform that we've created. And we're trying every day to try to mix and match and marry these things up to provide a more holistic service for customers that are trying to accomplish a disaster recovery or improve their disaster recovery stance. So wrapping it up, we'll take some questions. You know, the cloud disaster recovery is, if you look at Gartner and all the research that they've put out on this topic, it is almost universally accepted as the only methodology that customers should be considering long-term, right, versus on-prem DR or no DR, right? So you have to take a look at that. You know, security is really bubbling up to the forefront with all these breaches that have been announced. Quora just yesterday, Marriott the day before, right? All these huge breaches. It's only going to get worse because data is growing, it's being dispersed, it's sitting in cloud platforms that are not specifically designed to help protect that data. It's being left up to an admin somewhere to point and click their way through security, and it's something that we have to take a look at and all work on together as a service. So Dave, is it okay if I dive into questions, or do you want to say anything before we go there?
Absolutely, yeah. Let's do some questions.
All right. So somebody asked, you know, is the IAD solution that we're offering hosted at our sites or also customer sites? So from an infrastructure as a service perspective, it's only in one of our 10 global data centers. But from a DR as a service perspective, it's almost exclusively coming from, you know, on premises, from a data center in someone's city or from a data center in someone's office, right? That data is being replicated from that location to one of our locations around the globe. We are looking at things in the future where we can possibly perform an infrastructure service kind of on-prem. As you look at technologies like edge computing and things like that, I think that's going to be necessary, but that's not our reality today. Somebody asked a little bit about Veeam and PNAP partnership. I think that it's, to some extent, in some communities, Veeam and PNAP have become somewhat synonymous with each other. You know, and we're looking to expand that relationship all the time because we love Veeam and we love Veeam's customer base. You know, there's a lot of users. There's a lot of rabid users out there of Veeam. So, you know, we like interacting with those people, and they're often a good fit for our services. So we do some more different technologies for replication, but Veeam is definitely our go-to technology for replication and offsite backup. We've got options to provide licensing for on-prem, so you don't have to actually have a Veeam license. You can just, you know, get it from us and take care of your backups and do the replication or offsite backup. And yeah, so, you know, anyone who's looking for more information around that can definitely provide that. I think there's been some questions leveraged about cost. You know, a typical customer for us from an offsite backup perspective is going to pay anywhere between, you know, unless you're at the extremes, you're going to pay anywhere between $25 to $30 per terabyte offsite that's backed up offsite to maybe as much as $65 or $70 per terabyte. So like 1 terabyte might cost you $70 or so for a month for that terabyte of data. But, you know, if you've got 20, 30 terabytes of data, you know, you're going to be closer to that $30 a terabyte area. So I think that's very cost effective. It's easy, especially if you leverage Veeam today or any technology that supports S3. You can back up to one of our data centers worldwide, and it's pretty seamless and easy. All right. Anybody?
I've got a question.
Go ahead, David. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, a question for you. How do people typically get started? I mean, if an IT, say, manager or admin contacts you and says, hey, we're struggling with data protection and DR, how can you help us? What do you all do to understand that problem and provide solutions?
Absolutely. So we work with every customer almost like you're used to seeing and feeling from a traditional like OEM vendor, right? We have a call. We bring sales engineers to the mix. We talk about the problems. We talk about the potential solutions that exist to those problems, the pain points, and then we build a custom solution for the customer. Sometimes the quote unquote custom solution is an out of the box solution for us, right? Something we leverage every day. Sometimes it needs to be really, really, really stretched. Like I'll give you a quick example. There's a for-profit college that we work with that has 70 locations around the U.S. They replicate virtual machines from every single location, worldwide MPLS. You know, their total replication traffic is over 1 gigabit per second. So, like when you look at an environment like that, it's months of planning, it's months and months of implementation. But for the average everyday customer, we typically can get from a conversation, a potential solution, a POC to an implementation within about 30, 45 days. So, it's pretty easy to get started. And all it takes is just reaching out. You can reach out to me. You can reach out to us through our website or give us a call, and we will have a personal conversation with you.
Very nice. Very nice. And I know that DRaaS obviously is a huge part of the PhoenixNAP product set and solution, but what else do you all do? I mean, besides that, is co-location, security, networking, are those also areas?
Yeah, so I think that the one thing that people may not know, and maybe the name also maybe throws people off occasionally, but we're one of the largest VMware cloud providers in the world. So if you're leveraging VMware, you're looking at things like VMC on AWS, we're a great alternative to that, right? We're a little bit more flexible, a little bit more customized, a lot less costly, right? We've got a long track record in that space from a host and cloud perspective. Co-location in all of those data centers. Our typical customer, Dave, is consuming multiple services from us, right? They're coming in maybe as a colo customer in one of our data centers. They're faced with a big refresh. They decide to move into a cloud service for their production data. They keep their old environment in our colo. They leverage it for replication, for DR. I mean, we just rolled out a new security service that we call InfraSentry. They're looking at that threat management service as a way to help protect that production data. That's a pretty typical customer for us. It's one of those things where, for a large organization, we're a great augment in some point solution. And for a small organization, say like 500 employees or less, sometimes we're a very holistic solution. We're covering basically all of their IT services so that they can focus on their regular everyday business.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, great presentation, William. I think that's all the questions we have right now, but thank you for being on the event.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dave. Have a great one.
You too. For more information on PhoenixNAP, visit their website, PhoenixNAP.com. Their contact info is also on the screen there. Even William's email address and phone number if you have a question about something that he mentioned today and how PhoenixNAP can provide disaster recovery as a service, make sure that you reach out. And with that, it's time for our final giveaway on today's event. We have an Amazon $500 gift card going out to Adam Veronica from Arizona, and a final iPad Pro going out to Joel Carlin from Indiana. Congratulations, Adam and Joel. And before you go, I want to make sure that I remind you to check out our 10 on Tech podcast over in the iTunes Store. Short, great podcast that will help you to learn about the latest in enterprise technology. Make sure you visit events.actualtechmedia.com to learn about upcoming Megacast, EcoCast events, and webinars that we're doing pretty much every week. We've got some great technology events going on, in many cases, multiple events per week. In fact, our next event is coming up next week. That's the Hyperconverged, Converged, and Composable Infrastructure Megacast on December 12th. Make sure you watch your email inbox for an invitation to that event. If you don't have one, simply go to events.actualtechmedia.com. In fact, you'll be redirected to that right after this event. Your web browser will automatically redirect. And then if you're a potential presenter or sponsor of the Megacast or EcoCast series, just reach out to us at sales@actualtechmedia.com if you'd like to present on one of our events. We'd love to chat about it and see how we can help. And with that, I want to thank you for joining the DRaaS Ransomware and Disaster Recovery Megacast today. I hope that you learned a lot and had a great time. Thanks for being on. Have a great day. Bye-bye.